Well, good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marvin Revolt, and I am the chair of the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission, and we're going to call this meeting in order for today, Thursday, April 20th, 2023. There has been a slight change on the agenda that's gone out. The contested case hearing will be moved until May, if there's a conflict with the attorney representing that client. So that's the only change that I see so far in that. And so, Laura, you call the roll.
Commissioner Curran,
Here.
Commissioner Doherty,
Here.
Commissioner Floyd,
Here.
Commissioner Japon Porter,
Here.
Commissioner Miletus,
Here.
Chair Revolt.
Here. Great, so I think I need a motion to approve the March 16th, 2023 commission meeting. So moved. Laura?
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Japon Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Chairman Revolt.
Yes. So as you know, today will be the start, it's not actually the start, it's already started. Comments on the proposed additional surcharge on distilled spirits produced for the 2023-25 biennium. We are going to take comments over the next 3 months. Every meeting, between the meetings. The idea is to have the stakeholders from any position to have an opportunity to voice their comment and their concerns. We as a commission will not comment or meet on those decisions until the June meeting, at which point I will call for an executive session and we will discuss everything that we've heard and the ramifications of this proposed change and then rule on it after that executive meeting. So that's how this is going to work. If you didn't make the list to speak today, don't worry. You have 3 more months to do it. I'm aware that most of you have all of our email addresses in the state. Please don't hesitate to let us know your position. One of the things I ask is that, remember, not everyone has to agree with each other, but we're all going to put on our big boys and big girl pants and have an open discussion as to what this is about. So with that, the commissioners have anything to comment about what we're going to do?
Chair,
Yes.
I might make a comment. And for the record, I think it's really important, everybody listening to know that they have a voice in this process more than ever at this point in my time serving on this board. Do I feel that there is no rubber stamping and no automatic votes here, that right now we are sitting here with open minds, wanting to hear from you and anybody who's listening. So please, this is the time. We are reading your comments. We are considering that. We might be using your analysis, but we want to know from you what your comments are, what you see as the pros, the cons, how this will affect you, how it's going to affect the state of Oregon. So please do send in those comments or request a time to speak. I think it's really important that we're not just doing this for a show. We are really listening to you.
Sure. Okay. So, Laura, how are we going to begin? I'd like to begin.
So it looks like Mike Marshall and Pam Pierce.
So how this is going to go is that we have a number of people who have asked to speak. As you know, one of my jobs used to be as the timekeeper, but I don't get to do that anymore. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Floyd to keep the time on that.
I got it. Got it.
Please introduce yourselves.
Good morning. I am Mike Marshall. I have the honor and privilege of serving as Executive Director of Oregon Recovers, a statewide movement to end Oregon's addiction crisis. And I'm a person in long-term recovery, 15 years of no drugs and alcohol.
Pam Pierce. I am also a person in long-term recovery, 27 years. And I lead a prevention, substance use and high-risk behavior prevention organization. I'm also one of the co-founders of the first recovery high school in the state of Oregon. And I'm a board member of Oregon Recovers.
And your name is?
Pam Pierce.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Pam Pierce,
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, which high school?
Harmony Academy.
There's one Recovery High School in the whole state.
That's
Well, thank you for this opportunity, and
Where is that? Where in the state? I just,
Lake Oswego.
oh, that's right.
we're grateful to be here. We're grateful to sort of be here at the outset of this conversation. What we want to talk to you about is the larger issue around Oregon's alcohol crisis and how pricing is a prevention tool, not simply a revenue tool. In fact, I would argue, don't look at it from a revenue perspective, as the governor has suggested, but look at it from a prevention and public health perspective. And we really want to begin to see Oregon change its relationship with alcohol. And I want to start out by just sort of reminding you of the purpose of the Liquor Control Act, which is, at the end of the day, the highlighted parts or the bolded parts are to promote temperance in the use of consumption of alcohol beverages and protect the safety, welfare, health, peace, and morals of the people of the state. Some outdated language, but in modern terms, temperance means moderation or abstinence from the use of alcoholic beverages. That's the purpose of the OLCC. And so as you look at raising the price, that's important to know. Next slide. So our crisis, 12.34% of all Oregonians over the age of 12 are addicted to alcohol. We have the 5th highest alcohol use disorder rate in the country, which means, and it leads into, we have the 2nd highest addiction rate in the country for people 12 and older. We lose 6 Oregonians each day. That's almost 2,400 people a year to alcohol. Imagine if there were any other substance causing that level of death. And think of all the families impacted by that. Binge drinking alone costs the state economy $4.8 billion annually. Compare that to what liquor revenue currently provides to the general fund. Next slide. Alcohol-related deaths over the last 30 years in Oregon have increased 30%. And how many conversations have we had as a state about that? 45% of Oregonians say alcohol is a problem in their family. 55% of alcohol sold is used harmfully, primarily in binge drinking and underage drinking. Think about that in the context of the revenue we generate. 55% of that revenue is used to the detriment of the people of Oregon that are buying that alcohol. Underage drinking and binge drinking, this is really important, are the 2 leading contributors to Oregon's high addiction rate. Underage drinking and binge drinking lead to addictive behavior later in life, whether it's alcohol, opioids, meth, whatever the case may be. It is the gateway drug.
30 seconds.
Okay, next slide. It's also hugely involved in many of the criminal aspects of the crime aspects that we're dealing with on a regular basis. 20% of fatal drug overdoses involve alcohol. Next slide.
Pricing is prevention. I always say prevention is the cure. A few examples, Maryland, the alcohol tax.
Please continue to close.
So when Maryland alcohol tax increased from 6 to 9%, reducing binge drinking by 17% and the reduction 26% for underage drinking. We are the only state to use minimum unit pricing by raising the price, we see a slight increase in revenue for the category, 2.17%, and a significant decrease, 14% in bottle purchases of liquor.
Please make a closing statement.
When you make a decision, it isn't balancing business with public. It should be what's in the best interest of the public. As a person in long-term recovery, people need the education to understand how to prevent. And increasing the price of liquor does that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just say at the end of the day, really view this from the lens of a public health. We are in the midst of a crisis. Is raising the price an opportunity to address that crisis? Absolutely. I would argue raise it $5, not 50 cents, but 50 cents is a good first step towards dealing with Oregon's alcohol crisis. And we, in the subsequent weeks and months, you're going to hear from a whole broad spectrum of public health experts who are actually in Salem today testifying on another alcohol-related bill, but we'll be here to continue to share concerns about this, particularly from an equity lens.
Thank you. Questions?
Chair,
Yes. Mr. Germer.
can you address the alcohol pricing, the floor increase that we did earlier last year? There was a significant price increases done through that method. And I'm assuming you were in favor of that.
Yes.
And so you're just in favor of continuing it to go as high as possible.
Well, in the context of trying to address the crisis that alcohol consumption is creating, pricing is the most effective tool, just like with tobacco.
Do you have any proof of that?
Oh, absolutely. The Center for Disease Control, we can, through Jess and I can get to Director Prinz, all kinds of data relative to that.
So there are contrary studies out there. That
Done by the alcohol
actually-
industry.
Not all of them are, but there are contrary studies out there that say that at some point raising the prices. So we raised the prices almost a year ago and we haven't seen a drop in those things.
Yes, you have. You've seen a 14% decrease in consumption of that alcohol.
That's it.
That's according to your own report.
Well,
You saw a 3% increase in revenue for the state and a 13.9% decrease in purchasing of the lower shelf alcohol.
so I guess my question though is, are there contrary studies and studies out there that show that using a tax is not the correct way to reduce consumption?
I'm on the board of the U.S. Alcohol Policy Alliance. I paid a lot of attention to this. There's no credibly funded research that says that pricing is not the most effective mechanism to limit underage drinking and binge drinking, which are the two leading contributors to Oregon's alcohol problem.
So at some point though, if we raise it to $100 a bottle, then we are, what would be the word? We're penalizing those people who use it in moderation. And one of our jobs is public health is a component of it. We are a three-pronged, agency where we're also supposed to be promoting business and livable communities.
Well,
People
the Liquor Control Act does not say that. It says you're supposed to be protecting the health and well-being of the public. It doesn't make
It does
reference.
actually say promote business. That's in our mission.
Okay, well, it's in your mission statement. It's not in the Liquor Control Act. And so I think that's important to recognize, number one. Number two, again, pricing is by far the most effective public health tool relative to addressing harmful consumption of alcohol. Moderate drinkers are not price sensitive.
I appreciate that, but there has to be some point at which it becomes.
Sure.
Yes,
Correct.
and so
But
you're
this,
just saying we'd like it to go to $5. That doesn't seem like that's
if you took it up to $5, you'd see a 9.5% reduction in distilled spirits consumption, according to state economists. But it would generate about $400 million per biennium if you did that. So you
But
would.
do you know if that targets someone like me who says, I'm not going to use that?
No.
I don't. People who, how do we know that when you increase the tax, that it is addressing those people that have the problems that we want to address versus those people who are just going to make a just different decision?
All of the factual data
To it all.
done by credible researchers is that the folks that are most price sensitive are underage drinkers and excessive drinkers, binge drinkers, not moderate drinkers.
So I would like to request from you to provide to us. I'm a lawyer, and so I always tell my clients when they come in and they say, Joe has a drinking problem.
Yep.
And I say, prove it, right? They said, well, my kid tells me he drinks, 12 bottles a night. Well, that's hearsay. So I would ask for you, please produce these studies, full studies that show them. And I'd also urge you to, because I know they're out there, the contrary studies that say that raising or using the tax is not a legitimate way to deter binge drinking and other things. But I would like to see. those studies
Absolutely.
Other than just saying,
Commissioner, we are happy to do that. The data is overwhelming. And we can bring some national experts in if you would like to, from Johns Hopkins, from Boston University. There's no credible report saying that this hurts consumers or hurts. I'm happy to do that. We can work with
there's
OLTC
there's
staff.
no credible report that it hurts consumers.
Yes.
So like if somebody who wants to go have a beer, or I guess beer is not, but if somebody wants to go have a drink on their birthday and go to a restaurant, you don't think that's gonna hurt them by paying more and having to pay more out of their budget?
No, all things, if they're moderate drinkers, they're still going to consume that level of alcohol. It's not going to change their behavior.
You don't think that pricing is not going to change their behavior?
Moderate drinkers, it is not going to impact moderate drinkers.
I can
Underage
tell-
drinkers,
I can tell you 100% that pricing increase will impact that. It will impact my behavior.
that's anecdotal and it's hearsay, as you just pointed out.
Right.
The science, the data is that moderate drinkers do not change their drinking behaviors due to price increases. Now, if you go from 50 cents to $100, like you're suggesting, that's going to change behavior. If you go from 50 cents to $5 a bottle, which is what, 50 cents a bottle for a 750 milliliter bottle, that's 3 cents a drink. There's 16 cocktails, 16 drinks in a bottle of alcohol. So, multiply that.
So what I'm gonna do is this,
I just have-
because we're getting to a debate.
Yeah.
is-
Yeah.
Which I really
So,
appreciate.
so what I'm gonna, hold on,
So I
excuse me,
apologize.
when I'm talking, guess what? Thank you. So, other commissioner has a question.
Just, yeah. You mentioned $100 fine, because, and I respect that you brought up the Liquor Control Act, because it's one of the things that I think about the most when we make these decisions, and I think there's a perception up here that we're all industry, we're all public health. I mean, to me, it's about the balance. We tried prohibition, it failed. The Liquor Control Act came out of that. To me, it's about balance. So, whether it's $100, whether it's $5, I just want whatever is going to be in the interest of public health without blowing up the system. Because you can push things too far, and I don't. It may be that 50 cents is not too. I think it's a fair discussion, and I'm glad we're having it, because I just want to figure out where the point is that. But I think you have to also realize that sometimes things, and it's not even just about this, it's just in general, you can push the system too far to where it breaks. And then, we'll be there to clean it up, even in that, but I worry about that, because, yeah. So I respect what you guys are doing. I just think there's a balance, and we're trying to figure out what it is, so.
May I?
Yes,
So, and I would say the balance is way out of whack. When 6 people are going to die today, and 6 people tomorrow, and 6 people the day after due to alcohol, as a state, and it's costing us $4.8 billion annually, we should be figuring out how to get back into balance in terms of the state's promotion and sale and consumption of alcohol. We are way out of balance. We have the 5th highest alcohol use disorder rate for people 12 and older. And so pricing
Yet
is a
we have,
quick way to and an effective and a long-term way to do that.
but we do have some of the highest alcohol pricing in the country.
Because we manufacture some of the highest priced alcohol in the country. We also have until we have minimum unit pricing, we had the cheapest alcohol in the country.
so,
And we know from minimum unit pricing, it is working.
okay, Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, thank you. And congratulations on your sobriety.
Thank you.
That's huge. I do have 3 points or question. I sincerely want to know how the education piece impacts. I think that trumps everything for me. And I want to know how much of your efforts, your research and your studies focuses on education of everybody, not just the young people, although I think that demographics is the most important.
I think it's starting like OHA Rethink the Drink,
Sorry,
Rethink the Drink that OHA, the campaign that
but
they,
that's a recent. I'm
Yep.
wondering, I'm thinking about bigger picture. And I'm not disputing the pricing and all those other factors. However, with any kind of disorder,
Yeah,
education is paramount.
Commissioner, I agree
I wanna-
100%.
The educators to this.
well, it's being able to educate young people in schools, educating families, pediatricians, internists, everyone having a say in making sure that people understand substance use disorders. And again, alcohol is the thing we're focused on right now. It's asking questions. It's medical doctors having that information to be able to share with patients? Do you have substance use disorders in your family? Because it is preventable. So you can take young people, educate them in school, educate them when they visit with a doctor, in social situations. It's just having those conversations. And right now it's difficult.
But how specifically, and you can think about this and get back to us later, but how is education as a part of your platform, how is that impacting this alcohol disorder, and what are the results of those?
So, Commissioner, if I may, Oregon Recovery is a $500,000 a year advocacy organization for people in recovery. Pam's organization is probably funded at a much lower level. Where does the responsibility lie for consumer education about the fact that alcohol is a toxic, addictive carcinogen? Oregon Health Authority, we worked with them over the last 3 years, and they launched Rethink the Drink, which is terrific.
Yes.
But they have a smaller budget for that program than what you guys give to the Oregon Wine Board each
What is
year.
that budget?
Okay, so,
Rethink the Drink.
so
But that's just
Okay.
a social media.
That's exactly, but it is the extent of the state's education effort around alcohol. There is no point of sale education that the OLCC
okay,
does.
so
really.
this is an ongoing, part. So part of my job is, debate class. I'm going to cut people off. I'm sorry. No, not really. In order to move the process along. So I'm gonna let Commissioner Porter ask another question, and then I'm gonna have Commissioner Porter. And I'm gonna ask everybody, you're gonna give me what's called an elevator comment, which is less than 30 seconds, to the question they ask. Otherwise, we'll be here until tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'm going to tie my question one with question three, because the education piece is important. So I have actually researched, because this is important to me, trying to discern the, price increase with consumption. And there's a split. There's some for and some against, and both reviews cited the NIH, which I thought was interesting. I would like you to provide a systematic clinical review or several, not just a review, systematic clinical review regarding education and how it factors in minimizing or decreasing alcohol consumption, because that would be a very weighted piece of information. And the other thing is that I thought you mentioned binge drinking. One research paper that I did review indicated that binge drinkers tend to not discern between one alcohol preference to another. And I found that really interesting. Have you shared that same finding?
It's, yes, for binge users,
Yes,
they're going to use like whatever is there in front of them.
that's it for me then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just briefly, congratulations. I'm Commissioner Doherty, alcoholic. I've been in recovery about 40 years, so I want to give you a
Yes.
personal perspective. And I agree with what you're saying, that does have impact. And I think there's many things that have impact on us alcoholics and problem users. What worked for me was intervention, was treatment. The pricing had no bearing on what I was doing and where I was going and how I was going to get drunk. So I don't say that it doesn't have an impact. It's part of the solution. And I want to hear from you how else we can support those people that do have a difficult time with this, that are abusive, because that's not the only solution is pricing. There's many parts of this. It's education, it's treatment and that, and how we can help focus our efforts in conjunction with you to help achieve that goal of keeping people safe and healthy.
So at this point, you've been asked to provide the organization, the commission, information. I would ask that you have our emails, be participants. To your point, bring other providers, stakeholders, rather, to us. One of the things I ask everyone is that if you have people who support your position, have them come to your position. I'm not gonna let you do it again. So, I know I'm not supposed to say that. I already said that. But please bring other voices so we can have the other voices in the room. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Chairman, the next person that's supposed to be speaking remotely, we're not able to find her in the list.
Okay.
And so I think you'd go down to the next grouping.
Tina?
David Ballou from Hood River Distilleries.
David. I'm gonna have you announce who's supposed to be next.
I will do that.
So I'll be doing this back and forth and I'll get seasick.
Okay.
So David, good to see you.
Good to see you.
You'll have 3 minutes and I'll give you 30 seconds. I know. I know.
As an Irishman, I can't do anything to say anything in 3 minutes.
Did that count as my time?
Pardon?
Did that count as my time?
No.
No, that's a good point. If we have any questions to you, I'll stop the
Absolutely.
clock and I'll give you a 30-second.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, Chairman, Commissioners, Director, thank you for the opportunity to come and address you today. And really, before I talk about the new proposed additional 50-cent surcharge, I would just like to put a plug in for the current 14-year temporary surcharge that is still in place, and would hope that next time that comes up, we can have a robust discussion around the original 50-cent per bottle surcharge. Now on to the proposed new surcharge. And if you're the kind of person that likes to go to the end of the book and read, I can tell you the last page will say we strongly oppose the 50-cent surcharge, but I'll go back and give you a little bit of context on why that is. First, Oregon and distilled spirit taxes. According to the Tax Foundation, Oregon has the highest excise tax rate compared to any other control state. And if you compare it to the entire country, it ranks number 2, only behind Washington. The impact, second point, is the impact of Oregon distilleries on the Oregon economy. There's close to 100 distilleries that call Oregon home. These distilleries are a big part of the revenue that's generated by the alcohol. $74 million approximately of the spirits sold in Oregon were Oregon-based spirits last year. Third is the impact of Oregon from the perspective of Hood River Distillers and Oregon distilleries. Per the Beverage Information Group 2020 Liquor Handbook, Oregon ranks 26th in the U.S. for total consumption of distilled spirits, 26th. For large international and national spirit companies, that's kind of where Oregon's going to rank for them, somewhere in that mid-20 range, but not so for Oregon distilleries. By far, our most important market in the U.S. is Oregon. In Oregon, the business we do in Oregon is critical to our success and our viability. Oregon's our home market, and we're proud of that. But by a long shot, and not to overstate it, Oregon plays a critical role in us keeping our lights on, keeping our buildings running, and keeping people employed. The fourth point is the impact of the proposed additional 50-cent per bottle surcharge on Hood River Distillers and other Oregon-based distilleries. For a bit of perspective, our margins are getting crushed. We're taking hits everywhere, historical high. Ingredients, cardboard, paper, glass, supply chain issues, employee shortages, recovery from the pandemic, inflation. We're feeling a strain on our margins as it is, and now we're dealing with the prospect of additional 50-cent per bottle surcharge that's looming over us.
30 seconds, David.
Okay, we don't like it. We would oppose it. We don't have the bandwidth or the size nationally to fight this. We can't absorb it. So for us, we have two choices. We take margin hit, we lose profits, or we raise to a price point that we don't want to compete in, and we lose volume and we lose share. So in closing, we understand, the state's interest in raising revenues, but we don't believe adding to Oregon's already sky-high distilled spirit tax is a solution. We don't think putting Oregon distilleries in jeopardy is a solution. And last, we're big supporters of the OLCC, and we're vocal supporters of the OLCC. The OLCC in Oregon is a model of how control states should actually be run. And we are big supporters, and I would ask for you to support Oregon distilleries and respectfully vote no on the additional 50-cent surcharge.
Thank you. Commissioners? Order?
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask everybody, if you have a question, one question.
Okay. So thank you for that, Mr. Valet. Appreciate that concern, and I'm sympathetic to that actually. However, I'm wondering, and take your time, you do not have to respond if you don't have the information today, but I'd like to know how, speaking to Mr. Marshall's point about the underage youth consumption, well, first of all, do you feel any responsibility towards mitigating the use by underage youth of spirits? And if so, how would you, or how do you address that?
First of all, I will put together a better response to your question and get it to you, but just from the top of my head, I mean, I think we take responsible consumption of alcohol very seriously. And we take it very seriously at every level. Particular issues, we underage drinking. And I think that that's part of what we, in conjunction with the OLCC, try to prevent. And it's everything from checking IDs at point of purchase, and and us being very vocal. And we are as an industry about underage drinking, but that's just a 50,000-foot level answer to your question.
Commissioners?
Yeah, well, you guys are the first distillers in the state. It's a challenge, and I guess this is a little bit of a digression, but for me, nobody makes it in this state, in the alcohol industry for that many years without understanding both sides of the coin. And I think that speaks to why your organization's been there so long, because it is a balance. I mean, and so I think, to me, that's what this whole thing's about, is just striking the right balance. And but again, thank you for coming in. I think it's, and what I've seen from the alcohol industry's advocacy on prevention, it's almost like the folks that are in the alcohol industry that participate in those things are really, they're kind of saying we do have a responsibility. And so I think that, you guys have a long storied history and have done a lot of good for a lot of people in this state. So thank you for speaking today.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Oh, sure.
Could you,
Go.
I was just gonna, could you send where you got the information that Oregon has the highest excise tax rate? Could
Absolutely.
you just provide
Absolutely.
on your time? That'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Jill Cooler.
Hey, Jill. Good morning. You'll have 3 minutes. I'll show you here the spiel and I'll give you a 30-second. Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. I'm Jill Keeler, owner of Freeland Spirits in Portland. We're a women-owned and operated distillery with 25 employees making gin and whiskey. I'm speaking in opposition of the additional 50-cent surcharge of each bottle of distilled spirits sold. To reiterate what David just said, distilled spirits in Oregon are already taxed at the second highest rate in the country, behind only Washington. More than 50% of the retail price paid by the consumer in Oregon is the markup and surcharge that goes to the state. At Freeland, we have seen our cost increase by 50% over the last 2 years, including everything from grain and bottle prices to shipping, utilities, and staffing. And I know that's true for the majority of my other distiller friends in the state. Almost all of us have already had to mark up our bottle prices to cover those costs. And for Freeland, our sales have dropped dramatically in the first quarter of this year due to necessary price increases to offset those increased supply chain costs. We have been in business for 5 years now. Since we launched in 2018, our sales have increased every quarter. This is the first time we've experienced a drop. With this decrease in sales, we can't pass on an additional surcharge to the consumer and also stay competitive with the large national brands. A 50-cent per bottle reduction for the small craft distiller is much harder to absorb than it will be for the large national brands. And this will force many in the Oregon distilling community to cut costs in a variety of ways and become less economically viable. In a state that prides itself on supporting small businesses, I don't see how this is acceptable. We have people traveling to Oregon from all over the world to experience our exceptional food and beverage industries. Yet we've already had distilleries close due to the high taxes, and currently there's several more trying to figure out how to keep their doors open. So I encourage you to reject this proposal for the additional surcharge. Thank you.
Commissioners, one question, please.
I'm curious, thank you. I'm curious as to, I mean, just you probably may not have this information, but I'd be curious just to see how the increase in Washington tax is impacting consumption.
Well, I believe Washington has the highest abuse rate and also the highest taxes. We're second in abuse rate and second in tax rate. So I don't really see the connection between price impacting abuse.
Thank you. Commissioners? Thank you.
Casey Richwine?
I'm Casey Richwine, co-founder for Straightaway Cocktails. We're a small distillery here in Portland. We opened in December of 2018 and currently have 34 employees. I'm here obviously to oppose the 50% surcharge on distilled spirit products. As my colleagues have mentioned, I believe the surcharge will disproportionately affect the craft Oregon distilling community compared to much larger national brands and spirit conglomerates. As a small maker to produce a product that stands out, we have to start with quality ingredients. We started our business in Oregon because this is our home and because there's a great community of distillers and makers here. Oregon distilling is unique. Craft matters more here. And as native Oregonians, we believe that many of the best ingredients are found here. And as a cocktail maker, we choose to partner with other local like-minded businesses such as Smith Tea, Stumptown Coffee, and Portland Syrups to build our products. We utilize Oregon ingredients and small local producers whenever possible, and we also get much of our equipment locally. We partner with these other smaller local businesses first and foremost because we're committed to their high quality ingredients, but also because we believe in helping other Oregon businesses grow alongside of us. This commitment to high quality means smaller margins, as we must be mindful of being competitive with much larger national brands pricing and offering our products wholesale to the OLCC. Additional surcharges would likely further cut into these margins as we try to maintain that competition with large brands. It is more difficult for us to pass through that cost on the consumer, given our naturally higher price points, and we're unable to make a difference by selling tens of thousands of units. Continually rising fees and taxes would make us less financially viable and force many of us to look at ways to make up the difference elsewhere. This can take many potential forms, such as partnering with larger, cheaper out-of-state ingredient producers or tank manufacturers outside of the U.S. to cut costs. It would also cause us to reevaluate inventory and staff levels, viability of our current retail locations, and potentially focus more of our business outside of Oregon. While we are a small company, social responsibility and taking care of our employees and community are incredibly important to us. We hope to do good by doing well, but increased taxes and fees lowering our margins put our ability to fully contribute to our community at risk. We currently participate in 1% for the Planet, are in the process of becoming B Corp certified, and we provide our 34 employees a living wage, where entry-level production employees begin making almost 30% more than the Portland Metro minimum wage.
Casey, about 30 seconds.
They accrue vacation and personal wellness days, and any straightaway employee working more than 24 hours per week receives full medical, dental, and vision insurance with no contribution required from the employee. We are committed to our community, providing paid volunteer days for employees and donating $6 for every hour they spend supporting nonprofit, social justice, or environmental causes. During 2020 and 2021, we were able to donate over 1,000 gallons of hand sanitizer to the Oregon food banks across the state, and hundreds of gallons to Oregon Native American tribes as our way of serving Oregonians during difficult times. None of this is possible without continued financial viability, and we look forward to the continued growth of not just our business, but those we partner with here in our home state. Healthy margins from in-state distribution and tasting room sales allow us to not only reinvest in our business and people, but the entire state of Oregon.
Closing statement, please.
My hope is that you will recognize we as a distilling community are already overburdened with taxes and fees and seized with the institution of additional surcharges.
Commissioners,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Burlow,
Thank you, the Chair and the Commission, for having us be able to speak today. I'm Tom Burklow of New Yield Distillery in Portland, Oregon. And I'm here to speak against the proposed surcharge. I think Oregon is very lucky to have a vibrant distilling industry. But I do believe the proposed surcharge is going to hurt Oregon distilleries. And as my colleagues have already pointed out, our margins are being kind of crushed from all ends. I did a little check from 2019. My just points of reference, my utilities are up 40%. My labor is up 30%. Just like straight away, we always try to keep well ahead of the average entry-level wage. And then the same thing, surcharges forced me to be less competitive or eat the margin. And I know on the first temporary surcharge, we ate the margin, and probably this time around we can't. But really what I'm here today is to talk about a larger concern about the impact of the surcharge in the system in its entirety. This may be strange, but the OCC is a very successful agency. Is it perfect? No, but it's very successful. And I think it succeeds at its mission, and I wish I had more time to talk about that. But obviously it raises money for the state, and the state is lucky to have that as a revenue source. And then, but I think the key point is for distilleries large and small, it provides stability of a very well-regulated marketplace. And it also provides a level playing field for small distilleries to actually exist. In a lot of states, the market structure does not allow small businesses to succeed like it does in Oregon. And there is a pricing control in the OCC in the way they do things that allows the level playing field. And consumers get a wide selection. It's not just high volume, low margin national brands. I think all those things are good for the state of Oregon. And this support is manifested in the fight against privatization. Every time there's privatization comes up, the local distillers are one of the strongest supporters lobbying against it. And the voters themselves have supported the OCC time and time again by voting against privatization. I think the surcharge is risking that system. One is it's an arbitrary policy, and I'm not even sure what drives it. I mean, we have a track structure, and it kind of undermines the confidence of the distillers, and rising prices for modern consumers, which apparently we all agree is an acceptable thing to be in this state. And a recession definitely gives more fuel to the privatization narratives. And I think we all agree privatization will not solve any of the problems that people have brought up here today and probably make them worse. More access, basically a market skewed to much lower volume, lower margin, lower price products.
30 seconds.
And I think that's a real risk that we're going to face if we put this surcharge. We're kind of like breaking the system. And I think Commissioner Melitas talked about the system has to be in balance. And it seems like the system is in balance. I feel like the surcharge is arbitrariness of it, crushing of the smaller distilleries, and basically inevitably leading to, a focus on the market being dominated by lower priced alcohols from big brands.
Please make your closing statement.
I think I've made it 3 times, but obviously I'm against the surcharge, and I want to say in the context of the relationship of pricing, I just looked it up as I was hearing about pricing. You can go to Target right now and buy a 30-pack of Budweiser for $22 at 75 cents a drink. That is much cheaper than the current price of even a minimum floor priced about the same. So for most of us, the surcharge is just this blunt instrument that I don't think achieves its goals and is kind of misguided. There are a lot of other options for people to spend their money, and spirits, we're already high tax. We're just the easy target.
Thank you. Commissioners, one question, please.
Yeah. You mentioned this opening the door to privatization and that the impact on those states that go to privatization. Are you saying that, did I hear you say that it increases the amount of liquor got sold or the number of places sold? I want to balance this with what those that are opposed to this are saying about addiction rates and that. If you can tie that into.
Well, I think spirits is one piece of like beer and wine, which are highly accessible.
Right.
The other thing is, we're now gonna add, you privatize, the result is these moderately priced, high price spirits for moderate drinkers and liquor stores will be replaced by low price, high volume, low margin vodka in the grocery store. I mean, much more points of contact, so I don't see you're solving the problem. You're just giving, people more options to buy alcohol at lower prices and more locations.
Yeah.
And probably less money for the state, less money for, like, I completely support addiction recovery services. I've had two, actually recovering, addicts on my staff who worked for years, so I'm completely aware from family members of the dangers of alcohol, but there also is, part of our culture, moderate drinking is there, but I don't see how the 50-cent surcharge as a tool solves that.
Yeah, I think that the state of Washington increased by fivefold the number of off-premise locations when they went. So I see that the danger of this, and increasing the availability and increasing the drinking and more problem drinking.
Totally
Thank
agree.
you.
Commissioners?
Uh,
One question.
Just a quick comment. I mean, I think what's always bugged me about the debate, and you brought up a lot of the points, is that it seems like both sides aren't talking, because there's so much commonality that if one side just doesn't listen to the other side, we get nowhere. And like, we want to get somewhere. So, and we want to preserve the good things and, get rid of the bad things. So I would just encourage more conversation between both sides, just so everybody gets it, because it's a complex, complicated system. That's for sure. But, anyways, yeah, that'd be my.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, we have one more in person. We have Greg Astley.
Good morning, Greg.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'll give you 3 minutes.
And a 30-second warning.
There you go.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair Reval, Commissioners, Director, for the record, my name is Greg Astley. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association. I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment today on the proposed surcharge. Orla represents just under 10,000 restaurants, bars, and other food service operations around the state. It used to be more. It used to be more before the pandemic, but I think everyone has seen the headlines, the stories about how many restaurants, how many bars, how many icons we've lost in our state. We are still recovering from the pandemic as an industry. For those that were fortunate enough to stay open, they have incurred massive debt to pay their employees, to pay their bills, just to keep their doors open. Combined with rising inflation, rising fuel costs, all of the other things that you've heard from some of the other folks that have been up here today, those get passed along, and we're still dealing with all of that as well. This temporary surcharge is on the back of another temporary surcharge that was enacted in 2009, as you heard earlier as well. So we're now 14 years into a 50-cent temporary surcharge, and we want to add another 50 cents, essentially doubling that at this point. Doubling the tax is going to be incredibly difficult for our restaurants and bars to absorb. Many restaurants and bars obviously want to highlight Oregon craft distillers, the small craft distillers. They want to highlight those Oregon products that make us uniquely Oregon. And those folks are going to have to pass it along to the retailers who are going to have to pass it along to their customers. I believe that the moderate drinkers and anyone who comes in to enjoy a cocktail now and then is going to notice when that price increase happens. And it may mean that they'll come in less. Those lower sales mean that we can't afford to keep as many people on staff potentially, which means job losses. If anything's going to happen with this surcharge, and I know that the money has said it's been proposed for mental health and addiction, but it's going to go into the general fund in the legislature. So there's no guarantee that that money is going to be spent on what it's supposed to be spent on. If the legislature feels that this is something that should be included in the state budget, they should be the ones to include it in the state budget, not you. So to sum up, we are opposed to this, and I appreciate the opportunity to be today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, one question.
Thank you, Greg. I think you hit it on the head.
you know, as a restaurant owner, I can say that I know that for me, it would undoubtedly and inevitably mean job loss, right? Because I got to figure out all these hits that were taken. You can only absorb so much. And I think it would, we can unequivocally say that this would mean job loss of Oregon jobs. So I appreciate your thoughts and sentiments.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Other questions, commissioners?
I just think your organization has provided the training for how to, have safe service, and there's a long history of restaurants, taking this seriously. And so I think it's powerful when you come and speak to it. And I think that most moderate drinking, I would say, goes on in, liquor licensed establishments as opposed to the, so I think that if there's a place where moderate drinking occurs and where it's well regulated, it's the restaurant. So thank you for coming to speaking today.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Brad Irwin. He's remote. In there.
Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Chair Hall and Commissioners. Thank you for hearing my testimony in opposition of the proposed additional surcharge on distilled spirits in Oregon. My name is Brad Irwin, and I'm the legislative chair of the Oregon Distillers Guild. And the Oregon Distillers Guild is a nonprofit organization that represents the nearly 100 distilleries in Oregon. I'm also the owner of Oregon Spirit Distillers in Bend, and we've been making whiskey for 13 years, and we currently employ 26 people. This year, Oregon Spirit Distillers will purchase nearly 1 million pounds of Oregon-grown grain. For 90 years, the OLCC has done a fantastic job of its mission to support businesses, public safety, community livability through education, and the enforcement of liquor and marijuana laws. The Oregon Distillers Guild applauds the efforts of the OLCC and appreciates the work of this commission and all the people at OLCC that continue to deliver $629 million of general fund biannually while supporting responsibility and community safety. The Oregon craft distilling industry is a young industry that supports thousands of jobs, local agriculture, and generates tourism dollars. I cannot speak enough to how important this industry is to the state of Oregon. If anybody questions the potential economic benefit of spirits production in Oregon, we only have to look at the Oregon wine industry to be inspired. We only have to see the Oregon beer industry to understand what a successful distilling industry could do for Oregon. Spirits in Oregon are taxed over 50%, and there is an existing temporary 50-cent surcharge that has been temporary since 2010. Only Washington State taxes their liquor at a higher rate than Oregon. This can be found at taxfoundation.org. The Oregon Distillers Guild strongly opposes an additional 50-cent surcharge on bottles of distilled spirits. As others earlier have mentioned, Oregon has a craft industry that is young and growing. Our products support local agriculture and supply jobs to fellow Oregonians, but we compete with national brands for shelf space and price point. An additional tax on distillers will be absorbed by the distilleries that can afford it. It can afford to eat the margin, but the craft distillers will be forced to raise prices. Higher prices cause consumers to buy less expensive brands. Less people will purchase the quality locally produced products. This will not, however, reduce overall consumption. When Washington State privatized their liquor system in 2012, there was a 22% increase on the average price per bottle.
30 seconds, Brad.
For the 5 years after privatization, that consumption rate remained the same. Higher taxes on spirits will raise more money and disadvantage craft distillers. I also want to restate Tom Burklow's point because it is critically important for Oregon's future. If we continue to raise liquor prices, Oregon voters will consider privatizing liquor. This would be an enormous loss for the state of Oregon. Please let us do our job employing Oregonians and supporting farmers. Let OLCC do its job to generate revenue and safely and responsibly supporting the spirit industry. Please do not raise taxes on spirits.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, one question. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brent.
Hey, Kelly, looks like Kelly Woodcock is on.
Kelly, you'll have 3 minutes and I'll remind you at the 30-second mark.
Sounds good. All right, Chairman and members of the commission, I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share my testimony. My name is Kelly Woodcock, and I am a partner at Westwood Whiskey located in Portland. We've been in business for 20 years and have about 75 employees. I want to share that we are extremely concerned about the governor's proposed additional 50-cent bottle surcharge for several reasons. First, last year we felt forced to increase our bottle prices due to several inflationary factors, including increased prices for glass, grain, shipping, barrels, and labor, basically every component that goes into making our whiskey, but we felt unable to increase our bottle prices to completely cover our increased costs, despite our bottle costs, our retail price of $75 to $100. We know that we have to stay competitive with the large spirits producers, and we know that consumers are increasingly price sensitive given what's currently happening in our economy. This means that our margins have shrunk considerably in an already very thin margin business. We know that due to our current economic environment, we cannot increase our prices again. And at this time, we know that we will have to absorb this cost. It's directly impacting our ability to hire staff and to grow our small business here in Oregon. We compete in a marketplace that is made up of lots of little craft distilleries and a handful of huge ones. Those few large companies have a considerable advantage over the Oregon craft distilleries in so many ways that it makes it incredibly difficult for our craft distilleries to compete, including their ability to vastly absorb this surcharge. We know that Oregon spirits are the second highest tax spirits in the country. Continuing to increase those taxes, which we feel the bottle surcharge is, only puts Oregon businesses like mine at risk. We are just getting out of the pandemic, which was the hardest challenge our business faced. Taking even more cost increases firmly stands in the way of us recovering from that pandemic. I'm sure it's easy to get really cynical about, but I promise that I'm not just a business against tax increases. This surcharge will do real harm to our craft distilling industry. Finally, as a mother and a friend, I support addiction services firmly, and I just don't see this 50-cent surcharge as the solution to that serious issue. So I ask that you vote against this surcharge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, question? Thank you very much.
Okay, one more. Spud Shaw is on the phone. So Spud, are you there?
Yes, my name's Spud Shaw, and thank you, commissioners, for hearing me. I am the owner of a liquor store in Sisters, Oregon, and I'm in opposition of the 50-cent surcharge. I was around when we had the first one that was supposed to be maybe a year, and 14 years later, we still have it. So, and a couple of things on my mind about it is the big issue for me is that it opens the door to privatization, because I've seen over the years the threat of privatization and the public perception of LCC and the cost of liquor being high. And if it does privatize it, it's completely counter to Oregon's OLCC's mission of control. And if it does go to privatization, I do feel like big box stores are going to have cheap, high volume liquors that are just going to be counterproductive to a higher price in terms of controlling consumption. I think consumption will go up. It's going to be in every box store, every grocery store, and those stores don't have the control that we have at our liquor stores, because there's teenagers working there. They don't have the personnel to keep eyes on the product like we do. And so what happens is I feel that it's going to end up in the hands of teens more often than it does now. Currently in my store, I'm allowed to hire 18-year-olds, which I have done before, but they're very responsible. And for the most part, we have really tight controls in our store. So I just think it would be counterproductive to OLCC's mission to raise prices even 50 more cents, opening the door to privatization. I guess that's also I sell to restaurants, and they only get 50. They only get a small, like a 5% reduction on the price. They're very sensitive to price increases. I'm always trying to sell them something a little nicer, but the difference of 50 cents or a dollar is the difference that they need on their margins on their sales, and they've been hit pretty hard with the pandemic coming out of that, and a lot of them are closing. And but I don't really see how it helps the mission for OLCC,
30
even if we agree that. Okay. Yeah, that's all I really have that I wanted to cover. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you. Hold on a minute. Questions?
Yeah.
One question, please.
Spud, thank you for coming in here. I didn't hear a baby in the background. Are you not babysitting today?
No, I don't have her. Luckily, she's at home, so I am working. I'm on my own here in the store right now. But
thank you for being here today. And you may not have the answer to this, so I'm putting it out generally. What happened to when Washington went public? What happened to the agents that were liquor agents there?
Oh, I think that what happened, and what I understand, because we were watching that very close. I was, my grandfather was an agent at that time, and we were watching that very closely because Oregon was going to be threatened by that as well. And we were following it before the vote. We knew prices would go up. If they did go up, a lot of the small liquor stores, say there was 200 plus liquor stores like we have in Oregon. I believe that a lot of them sold to prospective buyers, and then I think those buyers ended up in bankruptcy because they couldn't compete with Total Wine, Bevmo, Costco, and every grocery store that has liquor now. So they all went out of business, and those employees, I don't know, they must have got other jobs, but there's I don't know if any of those small stores exist at all anymore. So those are job losses. That's money that's going towards national headquarters for big, national stores and not staying in Oregon. So I think that was a mess. And then prices went up, selection went down. Customers were not happy about it. We get a lot of customers from Washington, and they're surprised by our prices here. And we can always tell, like, oh, aren't you from Washington? And they're like, yep. And I'm like, yeah, I knew it. But anyways, it just wasn't that. I don't think it worked out that well. And then when I visit liquor stores or grocery stores, and I go to the liquor section on purpose to see how they operate, and there's minis right up front by the cash register. I mean, it'd be easy to pocket those. I don't know. It's just the control really isn't there that we have, and the customer service selection isn't there. I guess another thing that I would see is, like, those box stores are going to sell, again, like, we could raise the price $5 a bottle, but those stores are going to find a way to get high volume, low margin products. So they're still going to be selling a lot of cheap spirits to problem drinkers. So and they're going to have more access.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Spud.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. At this point, it is now 10:15. We're going to take a small break. At 10:25, we're going to start right on the button to talk about the issues around theft, as it's nationwide and particularly important in this area. Welcome. We're back in session. We're going to be discussing the issues around the retail theft issues. Many of you watch Sunday Morning every Sunday, but in that episode, there was a large piece on retail throughout the country. So we are in a period of time where this is going on everywhere. We are more concerned about what's going on in the state of Oregon at this time. And so we're going to have a discussion around where we are, what we found out, and what we can do. Also, be aware that I have some information that I'll be sharing, public information that we received from the Oregon Business and Industry regarding Organized Retail Crime Association, which is in Portland. And it's a response to a request that I made of them to attend, and they declined. So, please begin. Dan.
Good morning, Chair of all and fellow commissioners. My name's Dan Miner. I'm a liquor agent with 2 stores in the Portland area.
And Salim, you're going to be on this as well?
Yes, Chairman. This is Salim Noorani, and I'm online, so I will go after Dan.
Thank you.
Last September, I made an initial presentation to highlight the rising amount of crime, shoplifting, burglaries, and robberies in the state with our liquor stores. So what I have today is mostly an update with the most current data with a couple new ideas and thoughts. Next slide, please. So I was able to obtain the shoplifting data through March of 2023. So that's the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year. And we're currently about $34,000 over the dollar amount and at 98,000 compared to fiscal year 2022. Based on that rate, I'm projecting that we'll end up at about $130,000 of reported shoplifting claims and a little over 800 actual reports. Burglaries are up overall since 2018, but thankfully down since the spike in 2020. However, these were previously very rare, with only a couple in fiscal year 18, and prior to that, there was very, very few, maybe 1 per year. We have had 4 robberies in FY23, although not since August, I believe. Slide. So this chart shows the rate of increase in both claims and dollars that have been reported by liquor agents, and the data on the right of the chart is just that first 3 quarters of this fiscal year. So you can see the claims is the right-hand axis and the dollars is the left-hand axis. You can see that we're in a steep increase over last year, but significantly up since 2018. And that's the extent of the data that has been available from OLCC. Next slide. So this shows the rate of increase in a percentage. Slide. So when agents discover shoplifting in the stores, we first have to file a police report, and then we do a shoplifting incident report to OLCC. All we really need to OLCC is the police report number. I frankly am not certain what level of follow-up is done by the agency with that police report. We have to explain how reasonable care was used, and I think just as a general practice, we're always exercising reasonable care over the state's liquor assets. We don't want to be shoplifted, and we do what we can to prevent that. The good news is that until about I'd say that for the past year, the claims used to take as much as 2 months to process. Lately, they've been very, very quick, and that's an aid to the agent, just in our ability to track, particularly as the number of incidents have escalated and risen. Just being able to reconcile that our report was received and processed and not have to have 2 months of reporting to try to keep track of. We do think just in retail that we catch only about 10 to 15%. I believe actually in my stores, because I'm kind of focused on this, that it's a higher rate, but by no means do we catch, I would say 25% of the number of incidents at most. Fortunately or unfortunately, the brazenness of some of the shoplifters where they don't even try to conceal it makes it a little bit easier to identify, because they take handfuls of product and walk right out the door, right in full view. For that shoplifting and shrinkage that isn't reported, usually in a 9 to 12 month audit period, that's been identified as we do our audit with the OLCC. Slide.
Dan, if I can ask you a quick question. So with that shrinkage, if you don't catch it, you don't report it as your, who eats that cost as a liquor store? The agent eats the cost, correct?
Yes. And I have a little bit more to comment on that later on, but that undiscovered shortage is a liability to the agent. And that could be undiscovered shoplifting, could be administrative error, could be internal theft, which isn't identified. So I often hear, why don't you hire armed security to stand at the store? Now in 2020, I had a burglary on a Sunday, and there was reports that there was going to be a demonstration, a protest, a riot in the neighborhood. So I actually did hire a security guard that night. They charged me $60 an hour for that. So in this data here, I'm saying, what if I did it for Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening, just 5 hours, the person doesn't have to take a lunch? That would cost $35,000 to almost $47,000 per year just for those 3 partial days. At our compensation rate of 8.38%, I would have to sell $418,000 to $560,000 of additional liquor just to cover that single expense. Now, in those sales, the state would actually earn a net revenue of $150,000 to $2,001. So that kind of goes to your point, ma'am, about the risk versus reward here. Unfortunately, the agent, our margins are so low that this is clearly prohibitive to all of us. And certainly that kind of security protection wouldn't catch all of the shoplifting even when they're there, let alone all the rest of the time that they're not there. Slide. So I did comment that the burglaries are down from previous norms. I've been an agent for 15 years, and until 2020, I had experienced 1 burglary, and at that time, 12 years. But based on the current rate of this first 9 months of the fiscal year, I'm projecting that we'll have 2 more burglaries before the end of June. And the data that OLCC tracks, I just want to highlight, is only the liquor loss when you look at the dollar. So it doesn't include all the other losses that the agent might incur. Damaged windows, damaged equipment, other products that might be stolen in that event. So this is the same slide as I presented before, but we're certainly concerned about our employee and our customer safety as the number of these incidents have occurred. I personally lost an employee who just felt like it was an unsafe work environment. If we make insurance claims, then a high claim ratio will only drive up your insurance cost, and we're already facing increased insurance costs in general, let alone if we were to try to report all of these incidents. And that's primarily burglary or robbery, not shoplifting. That's not an insurable issue. I personally feel like OLCC or the state doesn't consider itself a victim. There's been at least released to the agents. And I think that one of the next presenters will dispute the bullet that there's been little to no analysis, but whatever analysis has been done hasn't been an action item that's been shared with the agents, shared with you, I believe, and shared with the agency so that we can try to focus on some of these issues. And certainly the police coverage and lack of prosecution, I know that varies county by county, but my larger store is in Multnomah County, and there's almost no prosecution of shoplifters, and particularly serial shoplifters. Slide. In fiscal year 2022, there were 277 stores audited, and there was in aggregate $355,000 of loss across all those agents. So that answers your question there, Ms. Floyd. So all those agents ate that $355,000, and I guess technically we were then compensated the 8.38% commission back as sales. But in addition to the shoplifting that we report, you know, how much of that wasn't discovered? Well, that's primarily that $355,000, and we make that up. We have an opportunity to get a 40% discount, but that's based on the assessment and the agent evaluation that the agency does with the agents. So not every store might qualify for that. Now, interestingly, I asked OLCC for data on the shortage in the warehouse. They weren't able to conduct an inventory, I believe, in calendar year 21. But they said that in fiscal year 22, there was an audit that covered a 2-year audit cycle, and they recorded $234,000 of loss in the warehouse. Now, that was entirely written off, so over $100,000 per year if you just averaged it. Entirely written off by the state, and I'm assuming there was no shoplifting. There could be internal theft, of course. Well,
Okay.
I would have to ask if breakage is accounted for separately than in the same way that it is at the liquor stores.
Right, no, you're right.
Slide.
Got it? Right? Oh, there it goes.
So again, we're trying to inform the commission, the agency, and the public in general about these issues in the store, and hope that we can get some additional resources to deter, prevent, and potentially even compensate the agents for conditions that are really outside of our control. As you stated, Chair, it's a nationwide epidemic. It's somewhat localized in Oregon and in Portland, of course. But there's other things we can do. I know that there has been a promise of a dashboard. It's not yet been released. I think that's imminent, as what's been told to me by TJ, who's presenting soon. But we still do a paper process, and we mail in our shoplifting incident reports. If we could automate that and have the opportunity to include a digital file of any security camera images, then that would provide an opportunity possibly to try to link the different stores and with the same shoplifter. And that would be useful for the organized crime task force efforts. We'd like to explore and discuss opportunities for additional resources from the agency, and that would be some potentially some dedicated staffing, including the law enforcement element. They could potentially assist us and try to deter some of this stuff. Also in 2020, given that it was during the COVID pandemic, but I had 5 burglaries at my store, and not once was I provided the audit team to come in and assist in trying to determine what the loss was. So I know years later in doing the annual audit that there was items damaged, stolen that I didn't identify because the time it takes to do that audit internally with my staff, and then trying to actually also be open as quickly as possible after the incident, that there were items that were either stolen or damaged that I wasn't able to identify that later showed up in the following audit. So I then ate that undiscovered loss. As I stated, I think that agents should be considered for additional relief from these shortages. I have had the discussion with former staff at OLCC to remove the qualification to get the 40% discount so that all agents could enjoy it, just given the criminal environment that we operate in. As of last September, that was still being staffed. That staff is no longer here. So I think that will need to be something that we re-request. And this last bullet is an idea that I came up with for this presentation, but for that undiscovered loss, that $355,000 that was in 2022, I'm proposing that the county tax distribution should compensate the agents back to the 2018 loss.
Say that one more time, Dan, sorry.
For the tax distributions that go at the county level.
Yeah.
I'm proposing that those counties need to reimburse agents within that county back to the 2018 level. And I say county because there's also city distributions, and then there's the general fund, of course, but I believe counties have the biggest opportunity to resolve crime in their counties. They have, of course, it's city police, but they have the district attorneys that are generally at the county level. And the better they can perform to reduce the crime in their county would mean that there would be less distribution out of that county disbursement to the liquor agents.
Okay.
So, subject to your questions. That concludes my
Question for Dan? Don't go anywhere. Lee.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Salim Noorani. I'm a liquor agent and the president of the Associated Liquor Stores of Oregon. Dan was very detailed in his presentation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little piece of that and amplify it a little bit more with some numbers. So for the fiscal year 23, which is into the third quarter, we had a reported loss, which means we actually discovered somebody shoplifting. We were able to stop them. We were able to call the police, get a case number, and go through all the other motions of filing a claim with OLCC. 90% of the losses are undiscovered, and that burden falls directly on the liquor agents. Some of them we discover it fairly quickly within a day, 2 days, a week, but by that time it's too late to report it. And then the rest of it is discovered during a physical audit. I myself, and there are lots of other stores that do cycle counts, which means we try to count every single bottle in our store on a monthly basis so we can at least identify where things are missing that we have not caught and try to pay more attention to those sections. So taking those numbers and projecting it for the entire fiscal 2023, and with those not reported losses, I'm coming up with a number of $1.2 million. That is in million, $1.2 million of unreported losses. Total reported and unreported would come out to about $1.3 million. Now, to put this into a little better perspective for you, we as liquor store owners trying to recoup that loss, because that loss is directly on us. We would have to sell $12 million just to recover that money. Now, that is just from our compensation rate. And most people don't realize that when we get compensated by the state, which is at a 10% rate, and the state, by the way, to put another context to it, 40% of the sales go into general fund, net general fund. We get compensated at a 10% rate. That 10% rate is gross to us. It's not a net profit. We have to pay our lease costs, we have to pay our labor, we have to pay insurance. So I would be lucky out of that 10% if we are left with 10% of that 10%. So another context for you here. So if we are selling a bottle for $10, the state is getting $4 in net profit to the general fund. We as an agent get $1 out of that $10 as a compensation check. Now from that $1, after spending 90 cents on expenses, so I'm left with a dime. So now we are comparing dime to $4. So I'm not complaining. I'm just trying to put context into this whole thing. So an average store sales, to recover that loss, they would have to sell $42,000 annually just to recover that money. Now that's gross. And it comes out to average of, and we'll get like a commission of $4,200 on that. And then once you take the $4,200 out, we are left with like $400 in net profit. So it is a huge problem. And one of the solutions I was thinking, and I had mentioned it in my previous presentation last year, that alcohol, distilled spirits that we have on our stores and on our shelves, these are state property. It belongs to the state. And I feel that any theft, whether it is shoplifting, burglary, or anything else, should really be classified as a felony, regardless of dollar amounts. Now you're putting some meat on the bone for prosecution, because if you have $1,000 threshold or so, and I have seen dozens and dozens of reports where somebody would go into Home Depot or something, and they steal just right below the threshold, so they're not hit with the felony count. And so you can see this, it's a huge problem, and I understand it is not, there's not a lot that the commission can do about it. It is a cultural, social problem. But what I would suggest is, as Dan Miner pointed out, that any reported or unreported losses, the state should not be making money on us on those reported losses, because what is happening now is that we are charged 100%. Majority of the time. There are certain specific circumstances, like Dan mentioned, where if you're a really good operator and then they allow you that to pay back at cost. So we get a double whammy. First, we lose the product. Now we are hit with a retail price value, making the state whole. And then to put covering on it, then we get a check back of 10% as our commission rate on that. So there's something fundamentally wrong with this picture. And I think the commission has the authority. They don't need any legislative approval to make some changes on how agents are compensated on those losses.
So maybe, sorry.
Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner Lee. Do you have maybe like, because that's what I'm trying to listen for when you're speaking. And it looks like there's some good policy recommendations from the group, the Oregon Retail Crimes Task Force there. How much of that could you, if you could define for us, what is internal OLCC policy is law? Because that's where I think there's a lot of confusion in general, just, you know, what you feel we can do, that we actually have the authority to do, what requires law change. Because it helps focus the conversation, in my opinion.
And Celine, this is information we want you to provide to all of us, so you don't have to, or Dan, have to jump on this off the top of your head. But
Absolutely.
Suggestions,
Absolutely.
like the meeting we had yesterday, this is the kind of information we want to have so we can flesh it out and discuss.
Right, right. And I appreciate it. And thank you, Commissioner Melides. I'm very happy to answer that. And also, thank you, Chair and Director Prince for a really collaborative meeting yesterday. And we really appreciate that you were really there to listen to our concerns. So in order to answer Commissioner Melides' question, it is within the full authority of the agency. So you as commissioners have been given that authority to make whatever changes are required. And I can point to this 4060 reimbursement that Dan Miner was referring to. That was actually, we sat down with previous administration and had that all hammered out internally. And we had tied it to an agent's performance and how good he's performing and all that. So that was tied to that. But at that time, theft was not such a big issue. And this has really escalated, you know, in the last 4 or 5 years. And a case in point being that it got so bad that a liquor store actually had to shut down. And I mentioned that in my January presentation to you. And that was this liquor store at the airport, that their lease was not renewed because of the high levels of theft.
Right. Just stuff like we can't make it a felony to steal liquor, and we can't make it, what was another thing was, but I mean, like, stuff like that would be a legislative change. I don't know that we have the authority to make it a felony. I don't know that we have the authority to tell the counties they have to give money back. But those would be legislative, correct? And we've got reimbursement.
Correct, right.
Where we can, and being frank and supporting where we can, but yeah, just always like to level set a little bit.
Right, no, and I should have qualified as to what I was referring to, so thank you for pointing that out. So there are two components to this solution, or if we can arrive to that solution. And obviously one has to be legislative, because any kind of law enforcement action or so, it would have to be done either at the county, city level, or, you know, much rather do legislatively so that it's across the entire state. And then the second piece of that is really the reimbursement piece, and which is fully within our authority. I mean, you could decide today in 5 minutes in this meeting, and I'm not suggesting that you do, but you have the authority to take a motion and to pass it.
Thanks.
Questions, commissioners? For either. So at the end of the day, we're going to send you some information that came from the organization Retail Crime Association of Oregon. Is anyone from the DA's office from Multnomah County here? The reason why I asked is we invited that organization and the DA to attend this meeting and have a discussion. They both declined. I was very unhappy with the letter that I received from the Oregon Retail Crime Association of Oregon. Because what you will see is what they consider their priorities. And I'm just going to say, you're not the priority. Their priorities were legislative bills that relate to funding of their organization with some changes in the law. So you will have that. So when people ask us about, inclusion and what's above board, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but the truth of it is you're not. So they need to be brought into the picture. And on a personal note, when I decided to retire from law enforcement, it was because the DA in my county refused to prosecute anything under a certain level. Demoralized the entire police department. That quality of life crime was not a priority. You had to lose so much money. To me, that was the last straw. So to that point that you brought up, Dan, contacting the county and the police departments and the DA, you're going to have to organize your organization and everybody else that's part of our stakeholders to say, enough's enough. We matter, and somebody, frankly, is going to get killed. I say that because I've been there. You have to do something, and it's not just us. And our team's going to come up and talk about what we know. But on a personal level, it's going to take more than just us. Okay?
Understood. And Sheriff, if I could comment, I have attended all of the organized retail crime association meetings virtually. And mostly as an observer and not as a participant. We did have an OLCC district manager propose some of the changes to escalate shoplifting to a felony. That was rejected, I think, for many of the same reasons that you stated in an earlier commission meeting. But my sense of ORCA is that it will play a role in deterring and enforcing against those types of criminals. I think that that's a very small slice of what is happening in terms of shoplifting in our liquor stores. I do see a lot of repeat offenders, but they would not typically rise to the level that would even be considered in the ORCA concept because of the aggregation of the dollar amounts and then the time. However, we have a lot of evidence to suggest that some of the same people are shoplifting at multiple liquor stores. And if we had the resources to try to aggregate those incidents within the time period, which I understand is 90 days, and part of the ORCA's legislative efforts was change that to 180 days. But their real focus is not to catch the thief, it's to catch the fence at the higher level. So I think ORCA is worth participation, but it will not do very much to address the current shoplifting rates in our liquor stores.
Okay.
Do you believe that these are just one-off shoplifters, or do you believe it's organized banditry?
It's ultimately all of the above. Because of the reporting, the lack of specificity that we have in the reports, when I fill out an online police report for the Portland Police Department, they don't even ask any kind of description of the suspect. The only demographics obtained are in the report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oregon Retailers of Cannabis Association, Jesse?
Thank you for your time today, attention for this really important issue. And just a point of clarity, the Oregon Retailers of Cannabis Association is merged with other trade associations to form the Cannabis Industry Alliance of Oregon, or CHOW. And that is who I'm here representing officially. We represent about 500 businesses and approximately 200 retail licenses across the state for the cannabis industry. And just want to say that a couple of years ago, when we saw this initial first spike, is when I first started getting phone calls, and almost every time one of our members was robbed, I'd get a phone call asking, like, what do I do? Do you know anybody else is going through this? And now it's almost become so normalized that when I ask people, they're not even tracking how many times they've been robbed. Like, they're like, I don't know, a lot. I have to go check to find out exactly how many, because it's just become so common in certain areas for some people that it is just tragically normal for them in their daily lives. That isn't to say it isn't a massive, massive problem for them. It is something that weighs on their head, not only because they're very concerned about their employee safety, but just because the general overall cost is so burdensome to them. And so it is something that for people in these high crime areas, that it's something they think about daily, have to deal with daily. And so thank you for the attention, because it is really, really challenging. The impact of it on us is unique. We have, there's obviously, it manifests in a lot of different ways. You have the actual physical damage that's done to the store, whether it's breaking of a window, breaking a security door, breaking of a display case, or anything else. You have the stolen product or stolen money. You have the fact that it creates a negative public image for our industry, which is already struggling in that space, disincentivizes, or I would say creates a culture of fear around our industry. Whether it's founded or not, it's real that we are subject to that. And then, of course, we have the biggest problem, and this is really the hardest thing. When I talk to people, especially when there was a robbery, and someone was threatened, whether gun or hammer or knife or anything else, or just a violent theft, is that employee retention is incredibly hurt by being robbed. One of our store chains estimates that whenever they're robbed, they anticipate to lose 40% of that store's employees. And that is just a massive cost, both in training, expertise. It disincentivizes people getting into the industry in the first place. And then when we bring them in, all of a sudden, here's this big thing that can drive talented people out. It is incredibly traumatic, as people can imagine. And I hear it time and time again, that now when I get a call from a member about a robbery, it's generally about what are other people doing to help retain customers. And so all of that is made massively worse for us, because we're a bit of a Frankenstein as an industry, which is to say we are federally dead, locally alive. And so traditional economic models and things like that really don't apply to our industry. And so, for example, 280E, the only thing our member is a federal tax code that prevents our members from deducting anything that is not cost of goods sold. So that window, that employee training, those insurance costs, any lost product, right? All of that is not deductible. So we pay whatever that is plus 20%. One of our members had $250,000 stolen. That was money to pay their federal taxes. So they couldn't deduct the money. They still had to make the money a second time to pay their federal taxes, because they still had to pay their federal taxes. They had to pay taxes on the money that was stolen. And because they had to re-raise that $250,000 to pay their federal taxes, meanwhile accruing new federal taxes, they lost a massive opportunity, growth opportunity, right? Because they had to make all that money, and they were planning on doing expansion. They had to put that expansion on hold for 2.5 years. And sadly, I just saw they put their store up for sale. So we don't have access. So we have 280E. Now, 280E, and because we're federally legal, also means that there are no business loans out there, no business credit cards. So when we have, if there is a business loan, it's between 15 and 20%, right? So if someone does need to invest to recover in their business, then they are finding that money becomes either very expensive or just really challenging. Insurance accessibility industry is incredibly limited and generally insufficient for covering this. The industry, as you I'm sure all know, is struggling right now. Per licensee revenue decreased by 25% from 2020. So massive reduction in total revenue across the industry. So people are also broke. So all of this happening at this time is just incredibly challenging. And then it's really important to remember that we are not covered. We have no bankruptcy protection. So when someone goes out of business or closes, it's personal money, generally from investors, from family, from retirement funds, that is at loss. We have no bankruptcy protection. So when everything is on the line for our members. And then, and so all of this adds up. And then when we deal with the fact that sometimes we definitely experience a lack of attention from the police force when it comes to this. Like I have had people who literally had video of the person's face, found Instagram or Craigslist posts where they were marketing the stolen cannabis online, and like pictures of the people, like the video and then the person from the Instagram account, and they couldn't get a cop to come to their business and take that evidence. Now that was a while ago. There has been some improvement, especially in the city of Portland, but it is not a guaranteed deal. And I know of a case where there was an armed robbery, and it took over 5 days for someone to come and get the fingerprints of the person left on the glass display case top. So things like that all really impact us. And of course, there's also the lost operating costs for hours and things like that. And when you're dealing with staff and closing down and trying to handle it. So all I guess I want to say is that please understand, our industry does not have the ability, our businesses do not have the ability to survive financial shocks the same way other businesses might be able to do. So even though this is a national problem, you just heard from Dan in the alcohol industry, they're also subject to an increase in thefts. So even though we're not unique, we are in perhaps the frequency, we are unique in the fact that we don't have the resources, because we're that Frankenstein type of space right now, to weather financial shocks very well at all. And so what this means for people is literally closing down their businesses, moving, getting out of the industry. It drives employees out of the industry and just overall makes our life incredibly challenging. So anything you guys can do, we would deeply, deeply appreciate it. In that, I have a couple of thoughts. One is, please consider the trend of treating licensees like victims when they are robbed. There was a time in the past where people would get robbed and then they get a $5,000 fine from some violation relating to that robbery, or threatened with a $5,000 fine relating to that violation. I have not heard any of those stories in the last year and a half. I think it's a really positive trend, but anything to do is like understanding this is a traumatic experience. And when investigators showing up, treating it as such would be really helpful.
Back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those anecdotal stories, my grandmother told me when I was 5. Please elaborate on that $5,000 fine that was supposedly imposed after a theft.
It was, I would say probably 2017, or 18, if my memory is correct. It was an incident of an employee palming a gram every time they made a sale. The store discovered it, turned it over, reported it to the DA. And I don't know if they ever were officially given it, but they were charged with a violation of $5,000 for not catching the employee stealing the cannabis sooner through improper auditing, if I remember correctly. So, and that was another case, was somebody had a jar in their hand and a customer ripped it out of their hands, and that store was fined or threatened with a fine for not having 2 hands on the jar instead of just having 1. So again, I think there's been a lot of progress made in this space. And I just want to say, please keep that culture and movement moving forward in that space. Like, I don't think this is such a problem, but I do want to acknowledge that it was. I think you guys have made good progress on it, and I want to say thank you for that, but keep it up. The second thing is using your voice and your platform whenever appropriate. one of the things that we are constantly engaged in is trying to normalize this industry. And sometimes it just helps to have it not come from an industry player to challenge people and really argue and defend the industry as a legal industry that is contributing to the economy, employing people, and generating a bunch of tax revenue for the state, but helping us be normalized and it's not something you guys will always have the opportunity to do, but when you do, just please know your voice matters to us.
JC, now you're advocating for the organization. You're supposed to be talking about crime.
Sorry.
So let's get back to that.
Okay. Well, I would say the other thing is helping retailers share information amongst themselves, if that is possible, about people. And I think the same way that Dan was mentioning, that when we do have, such as example, video of someone's face and other things, that if there was a forum for that to get shared in the area amongst other licensees, I think that would be a very simple but very helpful piece. I know it's something we've talked about internally trying to facilitate, but we don't necessarily have the right amount of resources.
So have you talked to PJ and the crime team?
I have not, but I know that they're doing some good work. And I'm excited to hear what they're talking about.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then help us connect with the broader business community dealing with this issue, and especially the other ORCA that exists and was brought up earlier. And I believe Shannon has already offered to do that introduction and help us connect with them. So those are some of the primary things. But I'm happy to answer any questions about why we're especially vulnerable to this and just the size of the problem if anybody has any other questions.
Commissioners?
I think, particularly, what percentage of the issue, Jerry, I don't think you can put a percentage on it, but what do you think the impact of being all cash has?
Oh, it's quite significant. And I think it's significant in two ways. One is just it affects people's general perception of us as targets, right? It increases the perceived value of us as targets, which whether it's fair or not, that is part of what's out in the ether, so to speak, floating around in people's minds is that we're a cash business. And I think the other part of that is that the cops don't really, I'm not saying it's a fair criticism, but I'm saying it's the perception that's out there is that we are also not, the cops don't care about if cannabis is robbed. And so it's the fact that we're all cash, and those two things combine to make us especially, I would say, or to raise the level of us as targets.
It was kind of a pointed question because I think fundamentally there's some industries where there's processes in place by the way the industry is fundamentally regulated that some of us up here have been advocating for cannabis for years. And and we talked about, we've fought for it. So I think that there's solutions that weren't discussed that I think are honored, that we've really worked hard to try to push for. And I think now some of those discussions we've been trying to have for years are all the more poignant. And I think perhaps this next session, we need to all circle the wagons and figure out fundamentally what we have to do to get right the ship. And I'm not, it's a broader conversation, but I'm here to try to help this thing, and to use whatever I can to do it. And I think there's some details that I missed, but you've done a good job, and I'm on your side.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to say thank you at this point, because I want to bring up the crime team.
Okay. Can I just make two things?
One
thing, okay. There is, Senator Merkley is reintroducing the Safe Banking Act very soon, and we're right, and part of the whole issue is around large part is around the crime piece and the cash. And so we are working with them and very supportive of their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
TJ. And your surprise guest.
Good morning, Chair, members of the commission. PJ Sheehy, Director of Analytics and Research and the crime team. I'll actually be turning this over to Shannon to speak more to the substance of the issue in OLCC's work. I'm here to share on this portion of the agenda. I'm here to share, if it works, it is working, a couple of dashboards that are going live to speak to some of the concerns that were raised in this meeting and other meetings about the visibility and availability of data that we collect. So I'll say a couple of things as preliminary remarks before going through the dashboards in more detail. One, these are version 1.0. They're just going live today. And so absolutely open to feedback from commissioners, our stakeholders, others on how this can be improved over time. It's an iterative process. The second is that these are public facing dashboards. We also have internal facing dashboards that are versions of this with more detail, because the public facing dashboards, it doesn't have specifics around locations. It doesn't have specifics around things, because the goal is not to provide data to make it easier to target people. It's to provide snapshots of the trends and issues. The internal facing data does have more detail so that we can, as Dan referenced, more easily make decisions internally, percolate that information to our stakeholders to help improve the situation. But the public facing dashboards are more bare bones. So I'll start with the marijuana one. I'll go in reverse order of what the agenda was. And I'll start by saying the marijuana thefts, we've required these to be reported from the outset of the program. And really, I would say one of the fundamental reasons for that is because there is greater diversion arbitrage risk with marijuana. And so I think one of the initial rationales around it was we wanted to make sure that licensees were reporting to the police and reporting to us and not using quote unquote employee theft as a cover for diversion or something like that. But over time, and I think you heard it from both presenters, it really has morphed into much more of there is a legitimate spike in crime targeting these outlets. And so we used to only collect this, well, we collected this data as individual investigations to understand the reason or what happened and how it could have been mitigated or those sorts of things. But in the summer of 2020, it became very obvious that there was a change happening in the volume and severity of these things. And so rather than only having them as individual cases, we started collecting them in a centralized place so that we could actually see the trends over time. So this data starts with the data that had been collected in the summer of 2020 to start aggregating and collecting it in one place. And you can see it's got two elements. One is the time trend of how many in a given month, and the other is a geographic trend of where is it happening. And so this is defaulted to show just the last 12 months, but you can actually go back further. I'll just put it at the last 48 months to show all the data that we have. But you can actually see the obvious spike in the summer of 2020 that was going on. It subsided slightly, but we are going back up. So that trend has not really fully subsided since 2020. And the geographic component, the bubbles are cities and the county with colors are counties. And so it shows the concentration in those areas of events. And so you can obviously see the metro area having the preponderance of the incidents. And so that's really all there is to show on the marijuana side of this. I can jump into the liquor one and show that, or pause for questions.
Sure. Move on.
So the liquor store thefts are a little bit different. As Dan and Salim spoke to, we get item level, bottle level claims of what happened to a bottle of it where it's not sold. So that can be breakage, it can be theft, it can be something else. So I do want to sort of parse these two dashboards out a little bit. Where the marijuana thefts, we're, I would say, more likely to be getting reports of larger scale thefts. We're not, I wouldn't suspect getting reports of every individual bud that's being stolen. On the liquor side, we're getting reports of every individual bottle, at least that are known, that are being stolen because of the dynamic that the agent spoke to around the compensation and having to account for every bottle in that regard. So we have the ability to show how many bottles there were per incident, not just sort of a snapshot of there was an incident, but some degree of severity of the incident. And so you're going to see the same thing, a time trend up here and a geographic component down here. The one difference is that this has the minimum number of bottles per incident, and so it defaults to 6. So what is showing here is the trend of incidents, both over time and geographically, where 6 or more bottles was part of the incident. 6 or more bottles stolen as part of the incident. And you can go higher or lower. So we have it to go down to 3 bottles per incident. So somewhat smaller scale events in terms of what's being stolen. And you can see there's more incidents, more counties showing now. And then you can go all the way up to 12 or more. So the larger scale events where it's not just someone pocketing something, it's 12 or more bottles that are being stolen. And again, we can go back to a fuller picture of the time of the data and show over now July 2020 to March 2023, we can actually see there were incidents in 2020, but we're now actually higher now, or we were recently than we were in 2020 for liquor thefts. And you can see again the geographic component with the concentration of those. I think now, unless there's any questions for me on this, I'd turn it over to Shannon to speak more about the substance of the work that we're doing.
For the record, my name is Shannon Hoffeditz. I'm the Director of Marijuana Compliance. The Public Safety Division has continued to work towards solutions with the increase of thefts from our licensees. Members from PACE and the Public Safety Division met with representatives from the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office to discuss the increase in retail thefts. As a result of the meeting, the District Attorney's Office has offered to assist OLCC licensees with theft investigations that are significant in nature, meaning multiple bottles, that in the recent past have not been investigated by local law enforcement. In addition, retail services will begin to work with licensees on a more robust reporting of thefts so that some of the larger retail thefts can be referred to the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office for assistance. Our current practice of reporting thefts coincides with more of an audit function and not an investigative function. As the commissioners have observed in the demonstration of the retail theft dashboard, a significant amount of the alcohol thefts are occurring in Multnomah County. And we would like to thank the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office for assisting us in working towards public safety solutions for our licensees.
Questions? What happens to a police report once it comes to us? Dan said, they make a report, comes to us. What happens to that? Do we do anything with it? What do we do with it?
On the retail services side, it does get reported to a retail district representative, and they do follow up with the licensee. I can tell you, I went to a chapter meeting yesterday. Brian Aker was also part of that chapter meeting, and he was able to put together repetitive thefts and was able to present with photos to the other folks in the group to help identify who this person was, since it did involve multiple thefts, so that we could take it forward to the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office.
Okay. That's new.
That is new.
Commissioners? So I just saw a report in New York where you have 21 million people comes into the state or into the city every day. And of all the crimes, there's only 6,000 perpetrators who are doing most of the theft out of 21 million. So I would suspect we have the same kind of situation here where a couple of criminals are having a heyday doing everything. So that will help.
It will. And I went to my first chapter meeting yesterday, and it was really encouraging to see all the retail representatives in the room from different businesses throughout Multnomah County to be able to share pictures of folks that do have repetitive thefts. It's kind of interesting to see some of the nicknames they come up with, these bandits, as they refer to them as in some cases. And to share the information and try to identify folks so that they can take it to the next step.
Sure.
I just wanted to thank Shannon for stepping in for Mr. Rich Evans, who's on his anniversary trip, 20th anniversary in Arizona. Hopefully sunnier climes, and he's not listening. He better not be. But wanted to thank Shannon for stepping in. And then I have friends, Mr. Chair, on all sides of the Portland Metro DAs and police. And we just want to make sure we're getting the information and helping, administratively, to see what we can do. So I want to thank Rich and Shannon and TJ for doing those partnerships. I made a couple phone calls to a couple people, and they took it from there to just figure out in this space what we can do to assist with this issue. So I just want to thank them for taking the ball and moving forward.
Other questions? Thanks. Thank you. So we'll be talking. You want to keep
We're
going?
next.
Yeah, you're
So
next.
Do you want us to stick around?
Yes.
Chair, members of the commission, TJ Sheehy, Director of Analytics and Research, here to talk about minor decoys. So we have another dashboard going live this week around minor decoys. And so this is data that had been actually, I'll show you what it was. So I'll show you the pre and I'll show you the post. So the what it's been to date is we're obviously doing minor decoys. It's a big function that we a big part of our mission. And so especially coming out of COVID, starting May of last year, made it a priority, and Shannon could speak more to that on the compliance side. We had various places we tracked these, and when we provided the data, it was in the form of a PDF each week. And so this is an example. We would have all the missions that were done in each of the regions by week, who sold, who was not a sale. But it was very difficult to see week over week what the general trend is. Or if I'm a member of the public and I want to know that bar down the street or that marijuana retailer down the street, did it pass or fail? Or has it had a mission? And that would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to go through all those reports individually. And so the goal here of this dashboard is to take the same data and present it in a more visual format with trends, more searchable, more interactive and user-friendly. I'll say first at the outset, this is for only March and April so far. We made changes to our case management system for compliance that includes minor decoys, and added additional information and additional fields in the workflow of how these are entered on March 1st. So right now, this shows those March 1st onwards, and we're in the process, and I say we, I'm not really doing much of that. It's people on my team in compliance who are doing a lot of great work to really get, since May, what is our true set of minor decoys, so that we can put it in this dashboard. And this dashboard will be from May 2022 onwards. From here on out, once we get that data in. But the general overview of this, and again, this is a public facing dashboard. We have an internal facing version with more detail, again, for us to be able to slice and dice this data and make decisions based off of it at a deeper level. But this shows for alcohol and marijuana, you can toggle between them. This is alcohol right now. For March and April, it's showing at the regional level what our past rate has been on minor decoys, as well as the individual operations for the most recent month. You can click on a region, so I'll click on Medford. And you can actually see specific for Medford, they haven't done missions yet in April, but for alcohol, but you can see here the missions that they have done in March. Or I could click on Portland and I can see again for March, and then I can click and show April. It shows all the missions that have been done, as well as at a high level, their pass fail rates. And so all of this is interactive and updates. And I'll show marijuana briefly. So you can see here, so we have the regional breakdown and the statewide breakdown for marijuana pass rates for minor decoys. So this is at a high level synopsis. We also have the ability to, if you go to the operation details, you can look for an individual outlet. So again, the example of the marijuana retailer down the street, the bar down the street, you can actually come in here and for all the data that is being pulled in, again, right now, only March and April, but soon stretching back to May 2022, you could search for all the results in your city, a specific trade name, specific license number, if you know it, see when emission was done, whether they passed or failed, as well as up here, the counts of how many of these decoy emissions were done. And again, happy to take any questions or otherwise hand it over to Shannon to speak more to the substance of my case.
Commissioners?
Good work, TJ.
Yeah.
This is really good information. It's kind of similar to your county health inspection, you know, if you want to see what the restaurant's doing down the road, what their health inspection score was, you know, how serious they take cleanliness of their operation. Similar, very similar. And I appreciate this. It's great.
Yeah, and I do want to, obviously have a great team behind me, and IT did phenomenal work to make it so that we can get this data and connect it. I've taken to saying we're a very data-rich agency, but we're also a very paper-based agency and have historically been. And so this is the type of thing, not just my team, but as an organization trying to improve to make this data more accessible, not only to us, but to members of the public. As we do these major IT projects and become more digitized, this sort of thing will become easier for us to do.
Shannon?
Yeah, Chair Revolt, Commissioners, again, for the record, Shannon Hoffeditz, Director of Marijuana Compliance. I really don't have anything additional to add. I was here in case there were questions into the operational portions of the program. But one of the things that TJ did mention is that we were able, with the help of our IT team, get the system, the reporting system in place. Before we were all paper driven. The data was all extracted from spreadsheets, but now inspectors have the ability to enter into the case manager system the results of the minor decoy operations that they do conduct. And so the minute that they get it updated and saved, it will help feed this dashboard. So it's very positive. It's going to be a great management tool to be able to see where numbers are in real time and a great benefit for us.
Yes, Director.
I got to put in a plug here, Commissioners, for, we just posted the position for the chief CIO, the Chief Intelligence Officer for the agency. I love that, we're using data. TJ's using it, Shannon's using it. So I just wanted to, everyone out there, if you have someone who's has expertise in that area, that posting is on our website. It's on the Workday website. If you have interested in that, Laura Gomez is our Human Resources Director. So I think this shows how we're trying to use that the data and actually modernize so we can support our licensees in both the industries, cannabis and alcohol. And then I wanted to go back one to the alcohol and cannabis theft dashboards that Jesse mentioned. Senator Merkley is reintroducing the safe banking, and so his office reached out for data to us. And so I plugged them together with Nathan, who's here, and Amanda Bora. So data is, we want to support with having that oversight with regulation and then providing data. And then the last thing I'll say, Mr. Chair, is that I'm going to do a budget update, but I presented our agency budget. And the KPMs on the minor decoys was a big area that the legislators wanted to focus on. And that's mostly because during COVID, it was really difficult, is my understanding, to have minor decoy operations. So I know that that's going to be a big area for Rich and Shannon and everyone to focus on because I know we want to make sure our high compliance rate, again, of our licensees is maintained. And we want to, we acknowledge that COVID made it difficult to even have decoys in the premises. And so these are all areas that I think are really timely and came up and with the legislature and our federal partners.
Thank you. Commissioner? Thanks very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Legislative update. No, new buildings, yeah.
I think it's still morning, so just checking. So Chair of all commissioners, good morning. For the record, Jeff Samuels, Administrative Services Division Director. Just wanted to give you a brief update. It's kind of on the warehouse project. We're still in negotiations with the CMGC, so that for our contractor, that's JE done. And so we're working with DAS and DOJ, and we hope to have some type of resolution, have that negotiation done soon. But it's still a process, and so we're still working through that. We really need them to come on board to help us with looking at the schematic design that I described to you earlier last month. And that's kind of where we're at on the project itself. There's still a lot of work on the sidelines, but as soon as we get that contract done with the contractor, that'll really move this project along. We're still on schedule. And we hope to have the contractor provide us all the pre-construction services, and then we would work towards the build, first part, probably the first quarter of 2024 for construction.
Jeff, can you speak to the survey that we're gonna do as far as looking at the office space, the office size and what we're gonna do to try to make sure we're value engineering that piece of the build?
You bet. So what Director Prinz was talking about, commissioners, is really just what we want to do is look at our current processes here at our current headquarters with our staffing levels to really dive down into and make sure we're making the right decision on the size and the square footage need of the headquarters at the warehouse in Canby. And our the current process and thought that we had for that with COVID coming in and the move towards the hybrid workforce that we have today was that we do 75% occupancy. So we've identified the staff that would move from here to go down to Canby once we're complete. And we said that 50% of those folks of the 100% would be in the office most of the time. And then the other 50% will be hybrid meaning that they're working from home remotely, but they do come to the office. So of those 50% working hybrid, we would consider them 25% there on site and 25% at home, thus 75%. But we want to look at our current operation today and try to make sure that we're making the best decision on that. Is it 75%? Should we be more so at 50%, looking at how we do our business today to move forward so that we can right size that headquarters building, that we have the right square footage and layout to meet our needs. And we feel like we might be able to have some value engineering so that we could maybe have less square footage in the headquarters building, thus reducing costs, allowing us to make sure that, the big driver of the project is the warehouse, and to have a successful warehouse that is of the right size that allows us to have the liquor operation and warehousing and distribution successful for at least 15 years, if not 20. And then the land is such that we can do further investments going into the future for many years beyond that with expansion at a future date.
And you're taking employee count, given their growth over the next 20 years and using that 75%, 100%.
That's what we decided from, you are correct, Chair Raval and Commissioner Doherty. But we also want to make sure that with our current workforce and the hybrid model, and if there's even further thought of more remote work going into the future, which there could be, that we again have right size the headquarters building, and we don't make it too large, and then realize that our function doesn't match with either our future employee growth or the future ability to work remotely.
Commissioners? Executive Director, could you talk a little bit, compare Oregon to some other states as it relates to warehouse and the ability to allow the industry to meet their needs?
Yeah.
Thereby blunting the area around privatization?
Yeah, I want to thank Jeff, and respond to the chair's, question. Thank Jeff because we're doing this thoughtfully, and I can tell you that, again, the legislature had a lot of questions about this issue as far as the land purchase and all the things that you've already addressed a couple sessions, but they came up, and I think what we came away with was a better understanding of that need to modernize the warehouse, the need to modernize the IT component, and the need to look at these issues that COVID put on us of how many of the folks like me who I'm in Salem some days, I'm here some days, I'm in meetings with industry folks some days, how much space do we need for our different types of employees? We're not alone. I'm learning a lot through our association. Mississippi is a control state that's going through the same process. We're in some ways ahead of them, in some ways behind them. So here's what I mean by that. They haven't even purchased the land yet. They're at that place where the legislature, bonded and approved the borrowing. And they're moving out of a situation where in Mississippi, they have a warehouse that has no air conditioning. So imagine staffing that warehouse. And they are they have a bigger backlog, that backlog that we fear they're experiencing where they can't get the liquor out. And so we're learning. It's always important to see how other states are addressing this and making sure that, at the end of the day, it's an investment. I think that's what I came away from. The legislature looks at this as an investment. We're making the investment in the long term to maintain the control system. And so I'm going to participate in the National Association of the Control States next month. And I hope to meet with the folks from Mississippi. Virginia has had some of these same investment discussions in Carolinas, and to make sure that I'm informed about how everyone's doing it. I asked Jeff to take me out to Canby to see the distributor will be our partner next door, see what their warehouse looks like, see how they're addressing some of these staffing issues. So we're just trying to make sure that we're learning so that when we get that general contractor under contract, we can then really dive into these questions about what we're going to build. And I think, like Jeff said, we're going to prioritize the warehouse space because that's what's going to serve the control system for the long term. And we're going to really look at that, the space that you and I will be using for these type of meetings, for example, what's the best way to build something for the future? And so I think this is a great timing to to get that kind of information and learn. And as you guys know, I'm in the learning process still, but this is an area where I've had a deep dive with Jeff and with Nathan and with Colin, our CFO. So we make the best decisions together for the future of that warehouse and that part of our agency.
And if I could, Director Prince mentioned, going out to our neighbor across the street from our property, Columbia Distributing, and many of you went and toured that. And if anybody wanted to, when we work with them, to go tour it again, if you wanted to see it again, or if you didn't make it, then we can definitely get you over there. And then lastly, again, just back to the partition. So last month I mentioned the partition with Clackamas County of the property across the street related to what we're going to do with this property when we move down to Canby. We do have a draft of the written agreement that we could have with OLCC with Clackamas County to take care of the partition. And we'll be bringing that to you at a future date, maybe even next month, but and that would be for your approval or approval for Director Prinz to sign that on your behalf. So that we could really lock that partition in with the county and move forward.
Commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Now we have a legislative update. Hopefully.
Yep, I think I'm gonna step in for the legislative update. Rosie was here, but she headed down to Salem to not do a legislative update, but to, there's a bill, House Bill 3610, that is in this area of alcohol, creates a task force to look at that issue. Laura, I don't think I just looked at this bill Tuesday, so I don't think we've made it available to the legislators, but it's in this area that we've all been discussing this morning, I believe. So Rosie's drove down to listen on that one, and it's House Bill 3610. It's got testimony today at 1 o'clock, I believe. So I've hit part of the legislative update is we did our 3 days of testimony on our budget. And went over the governor's budget for us and went over the questions that I mentioned about, the components that were highlighted in a couple of the policy option packages. Took up most of the conversation was related to the IT systems, to modernize the IT systems that are currently used and will be used in the warehouse. And I thought that went well. We had public testimony that I thought, I want to thank everyone that provided public testimony. That was this week. Is that right? My brain is starting to, was that Monday, Laura? Whew, my learning mode. Some days I forget which week that was. So that went really well, I felt. And so now the budget piece of the legislative update is now everyone is waiting for the May 1 revenue forecast. And that's for the overall revenue forecast for the state. And once the co-chairs of the legislature have that, then they start to negotiate with Governor Kotek about, okay, what are the priorities? What's going to get funded? And they'll walk through that. We again have a pretty unique place in that because of the way our budget is structured off of the revenues that come in. But that really is for the big picture, the budget, really that discussion will be May 1, getting into the detail of that. I want to thank our legislative fiscal officer and our DAS CFO, Michelle Deister and Tamara Brickman. They've been working diligently to ask us questions, to poke and look at our budget in detail. So I want to thank both of them. On the alcohol side, there's two bills. House Bill 3308 is the governor's priority bill. This is the home delivery of alcohol bill. This is one that Rosie and myself and folks from Nathan's team, Dan and Tyler, have been working on. We're on the -8 amendment. What that means is we're looking at language, and we've had 8 different versions of what that bill will look like. And so we're working with our partners. I'm confident we'll have a bill that will be voted on, and that bill is in the House Rules Committee. And so that one's definitely one that's a priority. House Bill 2013 is another priority bill for the agency. Been keeping the governor's office and us involved with that one. That one also is out of its original committee, and that has to do with issues around access and space for different products in the alcohol area, state and Oregon products. And then moving to the cannabis side, of our work. There's the House Bill 3049. These basically came from the task force on cannabis. House Bill 3049, this has to do with hemp and looking at and regulating hemp products. And then last but not least, House Bill 2931. This is the bill that would create a statewide lab where we would have a testing lab that we hope would become more efficient than what our partners are doing in the cannabis space. They're using private labs. This is a partnership with the Department of Agriculture.
What bill is that again?
That is House Bill 2931.
Okay.
And so those are really the bills that we're tracking and prioritizing in the legislature. And that May 1 is kind of the next big calendar date for the legislature as they move toward getting agency budgets worked and moving toward the end of the session, which would be late June. So about 2 months from now. That's the update.
Any questions, Commissioners? On the last bill, I think Matt asked for a lab 9 years ago. That's how quickly it moves, ladies and gentlemen. All right, thank you very much. We have, I believe, Nikki is going to talk about the distribution center update.
Good morning, Chairman Rivera and Commissioner. For the record, I'm Nikki Leslie, Distribution and Purchasing Director. I'm here today to provide a brief update of the warehouse performance in February. I wish I could have done March, but our data didn't come in, so that was the best I can do. Next slide. On this slide, you see some key performance that we track in the warehouse. Basically, we look at production day, total order ship, case volume. We break it down by how many cases we received, how much we shipped out, the amount of full cases, the amount of repack. We also track the inbound and outbound truck. We compare, and then the inventory, development and OLCC, those are costs to us. That's what the inventory volume at the, like, basically in 2022, we had about 50,000. And then in 2023, we were at about a little almost 72 million. Between, it went up quite a bit. And also all the store inventory average that we have there. Okay, and then the number of store we service during this period. So that kind of give you a little bit of glimpse. On this slide, you probably go, wow, that's a lot of red. There's a reason for it. The big reason for that is the warehouse in February, we had 2 days that we had to close due to inclement weather. So we were closed on February 22nd and 23rd. And we were able to make up a day. So basically, we brought the crew in on Saturday to ship Thursday order. But we were not able to fill the Friday order because we couldn't make the crew come in and work Sunday too. So what we did was to really kind of minimize the impact. We basically reached out to the store. We let them know that we were unable. So any local store, we will basically open up will call. We were to fill anything they were out, they were short, they really need. We were doing the same day will call if we can when we do they need it. And for the out of town store, what we did was the following week, they normally would get the regular order. If they need it earlier, we would add them to the earlier order. So they basically get 2 delivery that week. It's in order to minimize that. And basically also really would take the time to really thanks all the liquor store. They were really very understanding and they worked with us. They were very patient. We couldn't have got through those 2 days without it. They were really huge help. And as you can see in this slide, the shipping day, production day, we're losing a day in February really impact the case volume. That's why you see a lot of those red in there because we lost a day of shipping, so that take it down. So that also take down how many orders we processed because we probably lost about 50 50 order per day. We ship between 40 to 60 order per day, depending on what day it is. So that's what the effect is. You see there. And then, of course, the case volume and how much we receive, all that, because that means we have to cancel receiving, we have to cancel, the shipping. So based on that, and then the other column, I kind of total up the January and February performance. So hopefully, as we catch up, you'll see more tracking what we're trending as we go each, combine. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this one probably is between warehouse capacity. Basically, at the end of February, the 28th, we were over capacity by 13,057 cases. That at 102.08% capacity. So basically, this had a significant impact on production. When the warehouse is over capacity, we have to handle the cases moving many times. That makes us really inefficient. The reason why is because you have to move a pallet from somewhere that we need to put somewhere out, and we have to move it here to try to make room for something else. So that really impact us. The national average for really efficient warehouse, we're looking at capacity about 80 to 85%. That leave room to move pallet, for staff to move, for the forklift to maneuver through the warehouse. So right now, as you can see from that, we are way over. What are we doing now? It's really an ongoing battle. I will tell you that to try, because delivery coming in every day, and supply want to make sure they have stock in the warehouse. So what we did, we do have guideline on how much inventory they can maintain, but as you know, stuff can be in transition. They beef up their inventory because they have sale, promotion, different things going. So it's really a balancing act. So what we did was, I reached out to all the suppliers, send them a letter, hey, any item, you make sure you monitor your inventory closely. So basically, we went over, my staff and I look at the item that's excessively overstocked. So basically what we did was request them pick it up. So we did many truckload since February. So basically they come in, and we could have 3 truckload going out that we have to ship out. So, and then this is going to be ongoing problem. Summer's coming, holidays coming. This is a huge undertaking to try to make sure we still function and continue to operate without really we can't take anything else. And that's really is going to be the challenge going into the summer and holiday season. And then, and then also that doesn't help. We continue to bring in new items. At March listing meeting, we bought over 20 new items that we'll bring into the warehouse. So selection continue to go up. So we bring more in, and we're not taking out fast enough. So that's something we need to look at also about the delisting. Gonna have to increase that in order to keep up until we get into a new facility. Please. Okay, I thought this would be kind of nice, interesting fact of what some of the fast mover out of the warehouse is. So it's just a fun, right now for the month of February, how much we ship out. As you can see, Platinum 7X, we ship almost 8,000 cases out in that month. That's pretty huge volume. So I thought that was kind of nice, little interesting. Okay, next slide. If you have any, if there are any additional information you'd like to see, please let me know, and I'll make sure I'll include it in the next update. Other than that, I'm glad to answer any question.
Chair.
Yes.
Nikki, how's I remember a few months ago, we had you've given a little report on staffing issues in the warehouse. How's that? Is it calmed a little bit?
It's calmed down a little bit. We currently we have 7 open positions that we are filling right now. We're conducting interview. So, and then now we're gonna have to start looking as we get into the summer and the holiday, recruiting more temporary worker. So now we're getting our permanent position filled, and then we're gonna need to look at temporary to help us out through the holiday.
How's the attendance level of those that are employed in the warehouse? How's the attendance? That was an issue too.
It's an ongoing.
Yeah.
Richard? Yes.
Nikki, thank you. I wish I would have been as informed as you, because I got, again, lots of questions about this from the legislature. Nikki, when you call those folks that have oversupplied, I don't know if that's the best way to say it. And are you getting cooperation on that issue from them?
Yes, we are, I mean, one of the thing I will say, we have a really good relationship with our supplier. I think we try to really do a balancing act with them, like, there's some stuff that we just say, no, you need to pick it up. You got 5-year supply sitting here. And there's some stuff, if they're slightly over, we're willing to work with them and say, hey, keep an eye on this. Don't ship any more in. If you ship any more in, you will be picking it up. So they do understand. So we do work that balance out. They are, I mean, all the supply have been a great partner.
And I want to thank those suppliers because that's a cost. You know, this is this balancing our warehouse, their warehouse. So I want to thank Nikki for working on that with them and thank those suppliers because I know that's not efficient, obviously. And this is another area I'm learning from Nikki and others, you know. I got a question, Nikki, the one that I wish you would have been there to answer, you know, what's it mean when we're at 102% capacity? So this helps me. I understand it better. It means you're moving things around a lot is what it means, right? Inefficiently.
It's a bunch of stuff everywhere.
So stuff gets broken.
Yeah, that's right. And it's how it leads to loss, breakage, safety issues. So we really, that's a critical piece that I'm learning. So thanks, Nikki. And thanks for working the warehouse in all of these snow and you know, staffing issues, vacancies. I just want to thank Nikki personally for working the warehouse through this environment.
Thank you.
I would ask everyone, go ahead.
I was just saying another reason, as Director Prince points out, to modernize the warehouse.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Nikki.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikki.
So we're going to move on at this point to contested case. No, we're not. We're not having that today because of a conflict. See, pay attention. Retail sales. We're talking about some new operations that we're looking to do, make some changes. So bypass recess.
Morning, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Paul Rosno, currently acting as the Interim Director for Retail Services. And today I have 2 outstanding candidates for you for Flamin Falls for 1030. We come before you because of retirement for the existing agent. And these 2 finalists come from an initial pool of 7 applicants, so we're down to 2.
So is Doris on the line at this point?
Yeah,
Is Doris?
she was, yes, she is.
Doris?
1 second, let me
Sorry,
give
Paul.
her access.
Oh, yeah, amongst all those getting
Okay. Maybe call her now.
Hello?
There she is.
Hello,
Doris, this is Chair Rabold. How are you?
I'm good.
I met you just in time for you to say goodbye.
I know, I'm sorry.
You're retiring.
I am retiring.
Cool.
Yes,
I wanted to say thank you for the service you provided for us, and I want you to have a great time in retirement.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's the plan anyway.
How many years?
How many years have I had the store?
Mm-hmm.
9 years.
Wow. And
9
Donnie-
years, almost to the day.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you for your efforts, and we want to wish you well. If I
Thank
can
you.
map the organization.
Thank you
So
very much.
we're going to now take a look at what happens next in our world.
Sure.
There she is.
She is.
First up, we have Klamath Falls Liquor and More LLC, represented by Inderjit Singh. Are you just? Yes.
Good afternoon.
And I'm going to ask that you speak up.
Sure.
Thank you.
And Commissioners, good afternoon. For the records, my name is Inderjit Singh and I'm
Mr. Singh, one second.
Sure.
Do we have a time?
Mhm.
Okay, and is it, mind me, is it 5 minutes or we got 6 minutes?
7 minutes.
So is it 7 minutes?
Mhm.
Oh,
Everybody's nicer than I
I
am.
guess so. So, Mr. Singh, I'll give you 7 minutes and I'll remind you at that 30-minute mark.
30 seconds.
30-second mark. It was 30 seconds or would you like a minute?
All right.
30 seconds just seems like it's too short. A minute.
So my name is Indrajit Singh. So I came to the United States in 1997 and I started my career in San Francisco as a cab driver. And in 2017, I moved to city of Albany in Oregon and work as a retail industry. During my work, I learned cash, handling cash, bank depositing, ordering, stocking, training, inventory, also responsible for making a schedule, new employee. And also I volunteered in East Side Liquor Store for a week and feel free to day by day do get preparation. Next slide, please. For vision for my store, vision for the store to increase the licensee sale and customer sale, as well as adding more square feet to the store. Front total storage area is 5,500 square feet right now, and which is goes 2,750 front for the sale and 2,750 for the back stock room. So my planning is to add at least 1,000 more square feet to the front door, which is add more liquor shelves and more liquor items. Next slide, please. For exterior, change new bright LED lights, store front sign, and new window poster to give a new look to the store. Next slide, please. For interior upgrade, I will change currently tiles flooring, which is commercial floor, modern LED lights, track lights. I will add to give a bright and bigger look to the store. Next slide, please. Change counter to add new behind the counter. Liquor item like expensive, special, limited edition bottles. I will also introduce more variety for the shots and travel size product to the customer to make the sale goes up for the stores. Next slide, please. Right now, the currently paint, dark paint will change right away to the light color paint to give an open and wide look to the store. So, and more liquor will be added, fill up empty shelves, which I noticed when I've been there. Also change old shelf with the new modern shelves. Next slide, please. New security system will be added right away if I get this opportunity, and I put TV screens in front of the cashiers, so which is can front of the entrance, hidden corner to present shoplifting. Next slide, please. And also the store also in very busy location benefit, like located in busy shopping center, also benefits is the biggest need of the city of Glens Falls. It also has a hotel, restaurants nearby, which is keep increase the sale of volume for the stores. Next slide, please. I will add more hours, which is 8 hours a week, to increase more sale for the stores. Next slide, please. I will change the ceiling. Next slide, please. So it goes to funding. So the funding currently I have a personal account $500,000, which is current owner Doras agrees to sell it, finance, and we already agree and sign the promissory note. So I have it with me right now. Next slide, please. So my voluntary training at the store is attended by current agent Doras. During this time, I learned all operation of the store and also better relationship with the current employees. I keep all the employees same they are. I will commit myself 50+ hours weekly, and also I will give all my education works experience to make success for the store. I will give my loyalty to this store. And next slide, please. And thank you very much for the opportunity. If any question.
Thank you, commissioners.
You're good. You got still 2.5 minutes left.
Yeah, thank you for your nice presentation. Very much appreciate that. And I like what you're going to be doing with the store there. What did you gain when you went into this liquor store to work over the about 3 weeks, did you say?
I've been on and off in 3 weeks, but like, I think I've been like, works like 3-4 hours a day and learn how to ordering, receiving inventory, and how to go use the system, I think they call Ola, to be doing everything. That's what I learned.
But
For a week I've been there.
how different, what did you find different than running a retail store that you've run before?
That's, what do you mean?
Well, you've done retail, you're assistant manager at a retail store.
Mhm.
And then what's the difference between running that store, maybe and running a liquor store? What did you gain?
Kind of same what we're doing right now in the convenience stores, like we keep inventory track. That's what I learned from Dora. So it's working the same. But it's a little bit different. You have to be work hard for that.
Got you.
Keep
Okay.
everything track. Yeah.
Other questions?
One more, Chair. Did you see a gap? You say you want to build your business on contacting more commercial customers. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the bar licensing bars, yeah.
Is that a gap in this operation now?
No, she have really good. I saw that she have a lot of bars, but I try to keep good relationship with the client accounts. And if I can, I can bring more accounts to the stores. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Herb Miller.
Mr. Miller,
Yeah.
good afternoon. You will have 7 minutes and I'll give you a reminder of that 1 minute mark.
Thank you. And I kind of went old school here. In addition to the slides, I have some book for you guys to look over.
I like old school.
I'm old school.
Here, if you want to bounce back and forth. Commissioner Doherty. Boyd. Oh, there you go. Gang Pong Potter, is that right? Did I butcher it?
A little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, thank you. Just leave this. I first want to start off by saying thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you today my vision of what store 1030 could be like in Klamath Falls. And actually what great potential this store has in the future. Next slide, please. Oh, very good. Table of contents simply for you to peruse through if you would like. Real quick, a little bit about myself. I've been married to my wife 32 years. She's right here behind me. We have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. I have a business degree from Silverman University. I grew up in the grocery store industry. In fact, we purchased our first store in 1994. So this not only gives us 30 years of retail experience, but 30 years of owning our own store as well. Currently, we own and operate 4 convenience stores, and that's down from 6, and I'll go over that later. And 2 of these stores have liquor stores in them, so I am currently an agent. We also have 2 little beer bars. Next slide, please. As I said, being owner and operator of the markets, I oversee 9 managers with around 80 employees. I was also a deputy sheriff at Jackson County for 10 years. This familiarized me with how to write reports, to present to the district attorney to get charges filed against people. And I was also district manager at Frito-Lay when I first got out of college. Customer service. Now, this store is an incredible store. It does lots of volume, makes a lot of money for the state. But there are certain things that could be focused on this store that would just really drive the sales up. So that's the rest of my presentation. I'm going to focus on those items. The first of which is customer service. Sufficient, educated staff greeting the customers with uniforms on, either a polo shirt or a t-shirt with name badges on them. It's important for the customers to know who the employees are. Not only to seek information, but also it helps to reduce theft. And of course, we're going to continue servicing the bars and restaurant as well. And we're not going to charge them for delivery fees. 2 other very important points of customer service that I want to highlight on. The first of which is just getting involved in the community. We like to sponsor Little League baseball teams. Not very practical here, but we can sponsor bowling leagues or different things like that. And the second one is training of my employees. And I put that under customer service because we are responsible to make sure that we are being good vendors. We are not selling to minors. We are not selling to intoxicated people. Training is crucial in this area. And I have worked with this for the last 20 years. And it's even more important in this situation, I believe. Next slide, please. Hours of operation, we want to expand the hours simply because I found in the other two liquor stores, between the hours of 9 and 10, both AM and PM, we actually sell quite a bit of liquor there. Not to mention the grocery food outlet next door, they produce a lot of traffic. Why not attach some of their traffic to us? Next slide, please. This is a big one, this expansion of the retail floor. As you heard earlier, the majority of the room here is used for backstop. We want to move the back wall back about 15 feet, install a nice walk-in cooler with LED lights. What that's going to do is give us holding capacity for cold beverages. Now, number one category increase in sales for OLCC is ready-to-drink cocktails. And guess what? They sell better cold. So why not put them in there, give the customers an opportunity to buy cold beverages? And in addition to increasing the floor space, it's going to allow us to increase the OLCC holding power by more than 30%. I do not like when I go into a store, whether it be a liquor store or grocery store, and I see one facing of the item. I think that is a huge mistake. I just worried about things getting lost on the shelf. Next slide, please. You can see our new cooler that we want to put in the back there. I also want to point out here to the left-hand side, this is currently the store. You can see some displays there. Not very large, not much of an impact. Next slide, please. This is what we're proposing. Rotating huge displays in the store. Get customers' attentions. Get them excited about what we're offering. Next slide, please. Upgraded fixtures. You can see we want to redo the checkout counter. We redid the beams up top. Instead of being painted, they're going to have a distressed wood look. Additional security monitor, again, just for safety and security. The customers, when they walk in the store, they're going to see that they're being recorded, less apt for theft. Fresh category signs, I have those up there. We photoshopped them in. Next slide, please. Some additional pictures. You'll see on the left, that's what it currently looks like. The two pictures on the right is what we are proposing. Next slide, please. Here's an upgrade that I want to talk about. If you notice the picture on the right, those are actually custom-made fixtures that we have actually put in some of our other locations. They're very well lit, very warm, very attractive displays, and we want the customers to see that as they enter the store. Next slide, please. Improved merchandising. Made in Oregon section. A new product section. Gosh, we just listened to the expansion that OLCC is doing in the warehouse. They're spending millions of dollars, and they're no doubt going to have increased use. What better way to present to the public what the state is doing and the new offerings and keep them excited about this thing? Next slide, please. Update the exterior. Put some flags up front to catch people's attention. The banners in the window, they need to be changed over quite often. Also, I want to also say one thing. I think it's very important for the front doors, the visual not to be obstructed so people can see in and out. Again, just for safety and security of the employees as well as the customers. Some marketing tools, Facebook, text club marketing, email marketing. These are all great tools that we've used in our other businesses, and they're being underutilized here.
You got a minute.
Thank you. Next slide, please. The cocktail flow app. This is another big one. As I said, I want my employees to be on the floor with the customers with an iPad. If the customer has a question about how to make a specific drink, no problem. We'll just look it up. Next slide, please. Here's some projections. You can see year one with the recommendations that I want to put in the store. We see a very, very conservative 13% growth. And then if you step down to year 4 and 5, 3% growth, that's just inflationary growth. If we get anywhere close to that, we need to look at it again and decide what we need to change, again, just as if we were a new agent. I need to point out too, the buyout here, month 1, the subsection C. It's not what Doris was wanting. I've been in this business for many years, and if you'd like more information, I have it here about how I derived at the value of that business. Next slide, please. In conclusion, I've been an agent for many years. I've been in this business for over 30 years. I know how to get excellent evaluations. In fact, My last two evaluations were outstanding. And as you know, I already have some businesses and I said I sold off 2 stores, just recently. The plan is if I get awarded this store, I'm gonna sell off the whole corporations to my sons over here.
Hey, cash.
That's gonna allow my wife and I to focus 100% on this store in Klamath Falls and to bring it up to the next level. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Commissioners,
Chair.
yes.
Well, that you answered my question because I was going to say, you oversee 9 managers and 80 employees. How, and you have a lot on your plate right here. You must have a lot of energy, but I was curious as to, do you have a plan on how you're going to actually be present at this store?
Oh, absolutely. That's gonna be my store. Yeah, my other corporation is gonna be gone if I get awarded to this store. Last time I appeared in front of you, we really didn't have a plan for that. I've sold off 2 stores. One of them was going to go in July. However, if we're awarded this store, we're just gonna sell it to corporations and I'm gonna be done with that. My son's gonna take care of that.
What about the other stores, the other liquor stores?
Oh, I'll be putting up those for the commission to decide for the new candidate. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because I'm sorry, let me back up. There's stores within the stores, so they don't do near the volume as this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
makes it much more clear. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioners,
You retiring to the store? Is that what you're?
No, well, that's what everybody says while you're retiring. No, I'm almost 54 years old. I'm tired of running around location to location to location. I'm tired of dealing with, 10 different coolers at the stores. I just want to let the young guys take care of that. I'm going to focus on this store. So I guess I'm going to retire from the convenience store industry, but I'm not going to retire. I'm too young.
Well, it's partly a joke, but I'm paring down a little bit and I certainly can appreciate that.
Sure, thank you.
yes.
How did you come, excuse me, thank you. How did you come to the valuation discrepancy?
Thank you for asking that. I have some information here. May I pass it out to you folks? Okay. So as I'm passing this out, these are correspondence that I've had with Doris, and over the last 30 years, I have bought and sold many convenience stores, and really what Doris is selling is a convenience store outside of the liquor. And the average usually is 25 to 35 cents on the dollar. And obviously the more volume, the higher you're willing to pay for it. But I also just want to say that what I did too is I looked at, I believe you folks remember Steve, who had the Salem Battle Creek store. That was a very beautiful store there. The very last page, if you wouldn't mind turning to that, I can highlight, Steve was asking $768,000 for his non-liquor business. And he was doing over $1.2 million in sales. So if you just look at that up front, that equals 64 cents on the dollar. What was presented to me from Doris was 77 cents on the dollar. Now, besides the asking price, there's also 2 additional things that were included in Steve's price. And the first was the inventory. That was included in the buyout. It was Steve's store. And that store has a tremendous amount of inventory and liquor as well as beer in there. The second thing that was very important there is Steve also included the equipment. Now, he had a large walk-in cooler like what we proposed here. He also had a growler station, which was another cooler. He had all his gondolas set up. Those are about $200,000, and that was also included in Steve's purchase price. So if you subtract $200,000 from his purchase price, that brings it down to $568, and that brings it out to about 47 cents on the dollar. And that's right in line with what I offered Doris. As I said, I feel it's more than fair. There's a lot of work to do to bring the store up to the next level. I hope that answered your question.
So do you have an agreement?
No.
With Doris?
Yes.
No, I have an agreement that I included in there.
An agreement or proposal?
It was a proposal.
Okay.
She didn't sign it, of course. And in Doris, in fairness to her, I don't think she was taking advantage of this. I just don't think she realized what the previous store included, all that equipment and inventory. So from looking at it on the surface, yeah, it's right in line.
Thank you. We are now going to move into executive session pursuant to RS 192-4.660A2A to deliberate on the agent selection. Good afternoon. We have now reconvened. Could I have a motion, please?
Yes. Move to continue the decision to appoint a permanent agent at store 1030 Glen Falls East to a prior meeting, not more than 90 days from today's date.
Laura?
Commissioner Kern,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacon Porter.
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Chair Reval.
Yes. Okay, we are now moving to rules. Nicole?
Here,
Oh,
can I, do you want to say that?
go ahead, finish.
So Chair, this is not a yes or no to either candidate. This was because the agency needed to receive more information before making a decision. And so this will allow us the time to gather that information and make a better informed decision. But thank you very much for your presentations today. We greatly appreciated all the work that went into them. Okay. Thank you.
Nicole?
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair Reval and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Nicole Blase, and I am the Rules Coordinator for the OLCC. I'm here to present one rulemaking action for your consideration today. Our item for today is for temporary action for artificially derived cannabinoids, CBN. In 2021, the Oregon Legislature passed House Bill 3000, giving the OLCC authority to regulate artificially derived cannabinoids in the adult use cannabis system. In December 2021, the Commission adopted OAR 845-025-1310 to implement that portion of House Bill 3000. Generally, the rule requires that artificially derived cannabinoids must either be determined to be generally recognized as safe or be the subject of a new dietary ingredient notification before they can be used in marijuana or hemp items sold in the adult use system. The rule also contains an exception allowing artificially derived cannabinol, CBN, to be used in products without meeting this requirement until July 1st of 2023. At this point, some CBN manufacturers have begun taking steps towards collecting the data and conducting the analysis needed to meet the general requirement for artificially derived cannabinoids, but none will be prepared to meet these requirements by July 1st of 2023. Staff will work with industry, community partners, and other interested parties to develop a rule package to extend the deadline for CBN manufacturers to meet these requirements, subject to conditions. Staff or I are happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners? Nicole, we depend on staff to understand the ramifications of all rules changes,
Yes.
whether it's your group or other groups in the organization. And we appreciate that. I can assure you where we will ask a lot of questions, but we will not second guess the organization. Thank you. Do you need us to do something?
I will need a suggested motion.
That's what I thought. Commissioners?
Chair,
Yes.
I move to temporarily amend OAR 845-025-1310, effective July 1st, 2023 to December 28th, 2023, and to hold a rulemaking hearing at staff's discretion.
Laura?
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacon Porter.
Yeah.
Commissioner Miletus.
Yes.
Chair Reval.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners. Thank you.
Compliance. Victoria?
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Victoria Brown. I'm a case presenter in the administrative hearing.
And could I ask you to speak up, please?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
We have one stipulated alcohol settlement for your consideration today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners,
So as I understand, these people had a previous violation.
Correct.
And in order to satisfy our wishes on that, they bought this equipment.
That is correct, Commissioner Doherty.
And then they failed to use that equipment, got nailed again.
That is correct, Commissioner Doherty.
Any comments on that or?
The second violation, or the violation that we're reviewing today, was not within the 2-year window for consideration to charge this at a higher level. And we did aggravate that penalty that you see today by 2 days or $500 to reflect the fact that they did not use that equipment, which is you're bound by our rules.
commissioners? Thank you. You have a movement, please.
Chair,
Yes.
I move to ratify the stipulated settlement agreement for Easy Market as proposed by staff.
Commissioner Fern,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Jean-Paul,
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Mayor Raval.
Yes. Thank you. Director?
Further.
So pursuant to RS 192.660(2)F, we're going to go into executive session to consider information or records that are exempt from public inspection. Thank you. We are back in session. We have just ended the executive session for Thursday, April 20th, 2023, where pursuant to RS 192.6602F, we were considering information on records that were exempt for public inspection. We are now adjourned.